in the city.
I just wanted to let you know that I was just confirmed from the Secretariat that we do have a quorum so that we can actually call to order the regular meeting of the Permanent Council. So to begin our work then, and in accordance with Rule 43 of the Rules of Procedure, I submit for consideration the draft agenda contained in document CP/OD 2593/26. If there are no comments or objections, we will proceed with approval. Approved. Before continuing, on behalf of the Permanent Council, I would like to extend our most sincere congratulations to the people and government of Paraguay. This is on the occasion of the recent celebration of its National Day on May 14th and 15th. And having said that, then, for this chair, it is also an honor and a source of special pride for me to take this opportunity to extend on behalf of this council our congratulations and to wish the greatest success to Her Excellency, the President of the Republic of Costa Rica, Laura Fernandez Delgado, on her assumption of the office on the 8th of May. We expressed our best wishes for the success of her administration, which will undoubtedly continue to honor the historic vocation for peace, democratic roots, and international leadership that characterize the people and nation of Costa Rica. We also extend our congratulations to Prime Minister Philip Davis on his victory in the general election in the Bahamas and wish him a successful tenure. We congratulate the people of the member state, the delegation of the Bahamas, on this peaceful election day and their authorities for organizing the process, reiterating our readiness to continue working together for the democratic values of the region. Dear colleagues, turning to matters pertaining to our meeting, I should like to ask the Permanent Council whether it grants the following exceptional dispensations in accordance with our rules of procedure. In the first place, in accordance with Article 46, it is requested to authorize up to 10 minutes of comments or interventions for the Foreign Minister and the Deputy Foreign Minister of the plurinational state of Bolivia, as well as up to 8 minutes for the Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic. We truly appreciate your understanding. All of them under item 3, which is on the agenda. Likewise, it is requested to authorize up to 8 minutes of intervention for the Secretary General under item 4. Secondly, based on Article 46 bis, it is requested that the permanent representative of Brazil be authorized to make a joint statement of up to 3 minutes under item 6 of the agenda. If there are no objections, it is so agreed. Agreed. Since we have a very substantive and full agenda today, the chair will have a recess, a lunch break at 1 this afternoon in order to resume the meeting promptly at 2:30. I also request the cooperation of all delegations and our esteemed panelists in order to adjust to the speaking time provided for in Rule 46 of the Rules of Procedure, trying to stick to it for the benefit of the orderly conduct of today's meeting. The chair hopes and trusts that it will not have to make use of the power to extend the floor to anyone, and thanks in advance the cooperation of all delegations to ensure the flow of our work, and that you don't have to get cut off from your very sterling comments. As the next item on the agenda, and in accordance with the provisions of Article 8F of the Rules of Procedure, it is my duty as chair of the Permanent Council, to extend the warmest welcome to this council to Ambassador Jose Miguel Castro as permanent representative of Chile to the OAS, who presented his credentials to the Secretary General on May 13th. Ambassador Castro has an outstanding and recognized career in the public and political life of his country, having held high responsibilities in the legislative field, where he had the honor of presiding over the Chamber of Deputies of the Republic of Chile. His time in the institutions of the Chilean state reflects his firm commitment to democratic representation, political dialogue, and service to his nation. Likewise, his career in the professional and academic sectors, combined with constant sensitivity and participation in projects of deep social and community vocation, make up a comprehensive profile that will undoubtedly enrich the deliberations of this forum at a time of important challenges for our region. Ambassador Castro, in receiving you in this permanent council, we express our most sincere wishes for your success as you carry out your high functions. Chile has historically been a fundamental actor in the construction and strengthening of the inter-American system. Therefore, we are fully confident that your experience, leadership, and your vision will be of great value in continuing to consolidate multilateral dialogue, political coordination, and the fundamental principles that guide our organization's work. Once again, I'd like to warmly welcome you. It is a pleasure to give you the floor. We're very happy to have you here. I should like to give you the floor, and this is the very first time that we have the opportunity to implement the rules according to the rules of procedure. So, having said that, I would like to give you the floor for 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Very well. Perfect. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Alejandro Solano, thank you very much for your words. This has been a very welcome from you and from all my colleagues here, and I truly appreciate this very warm welcome. Esteemed permanent representatives, interims, and all servants in the organization, first and foremost, I would like to reiterate the welcome and greetings from Chile and for taking on this permanent post for my country in this organization. The OAS is a political forum which is fundamental for dialogue, cooperation, and the quest for understanding in our hemisphere. Chile is here in this permanent council with a conviction that the OAS continues to be an indispensable space to take on the challenges that are on the border areas and require coordinated joint responses. Our country is fully committed for the rule of law, democracy, respect, and the unbridled respect for human rights, and the strengthening, of course, of our inter-American system. These principles are the cornerstone of our foreign policy and guide our very participation in this organization. Notwithstanding that, we are well aware that our societies demand these specific responses in the face of challenges which are increasingly more complex. The progress against transnational organized crime and drug trafficking, the illicit trafficking of firearms and persons with the use of new technologies by these criminal gangs represent risks which hit security, institutional stability, and our democratic living together in our region. And that is why I will promote hemispheric cooperation, which is much more effective when it comes to security, strengthening, and an exchange of information, police cooperation, judicial cooperation, all the regional mechanisms that come to bear for coordination. And as such, then, my dear colleagues, it is imperative to also look at challenges, migratory challenges, from the standpoint of a balanced viewpoint. And Chile, in this regard, reaffirms that this migration should be ordered and regularized. Nonetheless, migratory flows that are irregular also require a special look, a coordination and responsibility amongst all member states. And similarly, we feel that it is a priority to make progress towards greater levels of integration, economic connectivity, competitiveness, and regional coordination. Our countries need to strengthen conditions that call for stability, solid institutions that will allow us to move towards growth, investment, and opportunities for our citizens. Chile accords special importance to modernization and the efficiency of this organization. The OAS should continue to strengthen its ability to respond, to step up, making its essential mandates a priority and adapting to the emerging challenges that confront this hemisphere. Madam Chairman, Chile will continue to participate in a constructive and open way based on dialogue, convinced that hemispheric cooperation and mutual respect and the commitments are fundamental values. And as such, then, our societies can have more safe places, free and prosperous opportunities for our peoples. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your comments. We wish for you and reiterate the best wishes of this chair and the entire Permanent Council for the greatest success in your tenure as permanent representative of Chile with your mission here at the OAS. We will continue with the next item on the agenda, and in response to the request made by the permanent mission of the plurinational state of Bolivia, it is up to this council to address the item relating to the internal political situation in the plurinational state of Bolivia. To begin with the consideration of this item, I am pleased to greet via virtual means His Excellency Mr. Fernando Aramayo Carrasco, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the plurinational state of Bolivia. And without further ado then, Mr. Foreign Minister, welcome to the OAS Permanent Council. I should like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to extend cordial greetings to you, and I'd like to specifically start by thanking you for this space and also extend greetings to the Secretary General Rablin, to the Deputy Assistant Secretary General Alejandra Solana, permanent representatives of the Organization of American States, delegates of permanent missions, ladies and gentlemen. Bolivia is appearing before this permanent council in the context of principles and mechanism enshrined amongst Organization of American States, the Collective Committee and Preservation of Democracy in this hemisphere. Preserving human rights and upholding the rule of law is an issue that brings us to you today. We come to this regional body, which is based on transparency, convinced that the effects that are affecting the institutional stability of a member state warrant the attention and support of the inter-American community. In that spirit, Bolivia wishes to alert with deep-seated concern a series of events that gravely threaten institutionality, democratic order, and the fundamental rights of our people. In recent weeks, we have seen action promoted by organized groups that go beyond the legitimate exercise of political protest, geared to creating institutional destabilization, weakening of a government that was democratically, constitutionally created, and democratic order. These are attacks on public institutions, attacks on public servants, interruptions of strategic routes that interrupt supply of essential goods such as medicine, and social economic disruption is caused. There are alarming indications of the agenda of some of these actors that are working outside the law and which want to use the social conflict and exert pressure, bring pressure to bear in a way that's incompatible with the rule of law. Given these facts, the government of Bolivia wishes to very clearly express that it fully recognizes and respects the right to peaceful protest, freedom of expression, and political participation. which are all key areas for any democratic society and fundamental values of the inter-American system. However, no political claim or sector claim can justify the use of intimidation, violence, collective coercion, or the undermining of fundamental rights of the people. This situation has reached a level where the government sees the need to resort to seek the help of friendly nations in order to provide food supply and other essential inputs and goods that are geared for the population. It's important, this important mechanism of hemispheric cooperation is not just about political cooperation, but it's a vital basis for the proper exercise of all human rights. Also, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, in its jurisprudence, has indicated that democracy, rule of law, protection of human rights are indivisibly linked and they are interdependent within the inter-American system. For that reason, when organized action seeks to overthrow the constitutional order by way of violence, coercive measures, or destabilization strategies for institutions, not only does it impact a government that was constituted correctly, but it also undermines the rights and freedoms of the entire population. When food is supply chains are broken, then this leads to uncertainty and coercion. These are behaviors that clearly exceed the legitimate exercise of democratic freedoms, acts that might create serious violations of human rights of Bolivian men and women, especially the right to food, the right to health, free circulation, work, and safety. Bolivia has never moved towards conflict as a political response. Our government, led by President Rodrigo Paz, has acted with caution and with attachment to the rule of law, while keeping all channels of communication open and on an ongoing basis and reiterated basis opened to dialogue with various social sectors, and has sought peaceful solutions which are constitutionally founded. However, we note with deep-seated concern that constitutional justice is becoming an alternative to resolution of the conflict, since the political actors involved are questioning its very legitimacy and are also specifically expressing an absolute ignorance of decisions handed down by the legal authorities that were legally put in place. That is why Bolivia is very respectfully requesting the endorsement of this permanent council and member states of the Organization of American States. We seek it to first reaffirm hemispheric commitment to the preservation of democratic order of Bolivia, to condemn any form of political violence, organized coercion, or any action geared to altering the institutional functioning of the state, support efforts of the Bolivian government geared to dialogue and the peaceful solution and a democratic solution of conflicts, to express solidarity with the Bolivian people, who are the main victims of the economic and social consequences which stem from these actions. And finally, Bolivia wishes to request political support and careful follow-up from the Secretary General of the Organization of American States in the context of his mandate and the principles enshrined in the OAS Charter, in order to contribute to the strengthening of the democratic dialogue and social peace in our country. Bolivia today reaffirms before this organization its unlimited commitment to the charter of the Organization of the United American States, the rule of law, multilateralism, dialogue, and peace as the only legitimate ways to democratically coexist amongst our peoples. Thank you very much, sir and ma'am.
Muchísimas gracias a usted, señor Canciller Aramayo, por su exposición y por traer a la atención de este Consejo Permanente la información que nos ha compartido la mañana de hoy, de alta relevancia para los trabajos que hacemos y para el seguimiento que usted mismo nos ha solicitado. Le agradecemos haber enviado la nota, tomamos debida atención de sus manifestaciones y seguimos con la agenda, y darle también el uso de la palabra a su representante, al señor viceministro Carlos Paz Ide, quien nos acompaña en sala, señor viceministro de Relaciones Exteriores del Estado Plurinacional de Bolivia. Tiene usted la palabra. Por favor, proceda.
Gracias, señora presidenta del Consejo Permanente, distinguidos representantes permanentes, señoras y señores. Comparezco ante esta honorable...
Si me permite que...
The interpretation is functioning now. It's working, yes, it's working. Please continue. I appear before this distinguished permanent council with a view to objectively present, technically and responsibly present, the political and social situation currently taking place in Bolivia. In addition to the political considerations that were expressed by our Minister Fernando Armayo, Bolivia is dealing with a complex scenario of social conflict in the midst of a process of economic transition and institutional transition, which is particularly challenging. The constitutional government of Bolivia assumed leadership of the country in a context that was marked by structural imbalances accumulated over several years. Sustained decrease in revenue and fuel weakening internationally inflationary pressure and growing fiscal and financial gaps. Given this reality, the Bolivian government has promoted measures geared to recovering economic sustainability, to strengthen the democratic institutions, and to establish conditions to provide for stability for the people. These decisions were necessary from a structural point of view, and they have created significant social tension, which the state fully recognizes in the democratic and constitutional context. Bolivia reaffirms before this council that it recognizes and fully respects the right to peaceful protest, freedom of expression, the freedom of association, and social participation as essential ingredients of any institutional democracy and based on the standards set forth in the American Charter on Human Rights and other founding documents of this institution. However, we also recognize that no right is absolute. When exercising it has a serious impact and a disproportionate impact on fundamental rights of third parties. In recent weeks, various blockades that were set up on strategic roads, which exceeded the 60 points of interruption, have led to severe shortages of fuel, food, medications, and medical oxygen. This compromised the functioning of hospitals. It made it difficult to have timely access to health care, and it seriously restricted the free circulation of people and goods. The Bolivian government very much regrets that in this context of conflict, we have seen the loss of human lives. Hundreds of people have been affected, and there have been situations which were serious in their humanitarian impact. The loss of life is the highest limit on our democracy and the main responsibility of the state. That is why Bolivia believes that it is indispensable to make a distinction between peaceful protest and legitimate protest protected by democratic order, and actions which, using prolonged mechanisms of coercion and paralysis, are fundamentally violating the rights of millions of people. The Bolivian state has a constitutional and international responsibility to simultaneously promote peaceful protest and that right and the fundamental rights of the non-participating people. This involves using necessity, the law, proportionality, and a strict observance of human rights. To do so, state inaction, given prolonged blockades which compromise food, essential medication, and other goods, could also be non-compliance with international responsibilities of the state in the area of protecting human rights, internationally assumed. This is why any interruption of public order and the transit of goods will continue under the strict observance with international standards and in the context of the rule of law. The government of President Rodrigo Paz at all times has promoted dialogue as the main democratic mechanism to resolve conflict. We have set up spaces for negotiation with different social sectors, productive sectors, and territorial sectors, and we've reached significant agreements when demands were put forth in the context of good faith, lawfulness, and institutional respect. The will for dialogue cannot be seen as a renouncement by the state of its constitutional obligations to continue to guarantee continued service, essential services, provide for free circulation, and ensure the regular functioning of democratic institutions. Bolivia itself notes with concern that some sectors are seeking to use the conflict and leverage it with an agenda in mind to politically destabilize the country and weaken our institutions. We can see that the situation become worsened when extreme pressure is brought to bear, along with confrontational speeches and with illicit means used that are seeking to weaken the legitimate authority of democratic states. That is why Bolivia believes that it's vital to preserve institutional stability, peaceful coexistence, and the democratic resolution of conflict within a constitutional framework. Our country reiterates before this Permanent Council that the constitutional mandate of the government, which was democratically elected, stems from the sovereign will expressed by the Bolivian people, and any political difference or social difference must be resolved within the mechanisms provided for by the Constitution and by law. And it can never be done due to coercion or other mechanisms which are incompatible with democratic order. Bolivia is fully available and willing to cooperate with the Secretary General of the OAS and with the bodies of the Inter-American system to promote a peaceful resolution of conflict, to preserve democratic coexistence, and to strengthen institutional dialogue. Bolivia reaffirms its commitment to a peaceful resolution, democratic and inclusive resolution at this time, which is based on dialogue, on institutional stability, and national reconciliation. To process the differences within democracy and never against democracy. That's the main principle underpinning our country and what we restate here and reaffirm before the Inter-American system and the OAS. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister Paz. Now we'll give the floor to those delegations who wish to speak and order of the list of requests, and by form and based on courtesy, I'd like to begin by giving the floor to Chancellor of the Dominican Republic, His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, who is here with us virtually and has been with us since the beginning of this session. Minister, thank you again and welcome to a session. You have the floor. Thank you. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bolivia, Madam Chair of the Permanent Council, Alejandra Solana, Secretary General Randim, Assistant Secretary General Laura Hill, distinguished permanent representatives. The Dominican Republic has been following with deep-seated concern the evolution and changes of the social and humanitarian situation which is unfolding in Bolivia. I'd like to point out that in recent days, communications have been maintained with the Minister Aramayo, by which we'll be able to closely follow events unfolding in that sister nation. And we have reiterated our interest in making sure that social peace, constitutional order, and democratic dialogue prevail. If I may, I'd like to begin by expressing our solidarity with the Bolivarian people, especially with the families today that are suffering the consequences of the blockades, disturbances, and tension that are affecting some regions in the country, making it difficult to have access to food, medication, fuel, and other essential inputs. Our region knows all too well the human cost paid by prolonged crises and the political impact of abandoning institutions that then becomes blockades of roads, inaccessibility to essential goods, and the blocking of roads. The first to suffer are the most vulnerable sectors of society. The Dominican Republic rejects all forms of violence, as well as any action geared to changing the constitutional order or not recognizing the sovereign will democratically expressed by the Bolivian people in the elections of 2025. President Rodrigo Paz and the constitutional government of Bolivia stem from a legitimate electoral process. As a result, any social or political interference should be channeled through institutional frameworks and a democratic framework. And it should never be done through intimidation, coercion, or attempts to break the institutional order. The Inter-American Charter reminds us that democracy is not just preserved by way of elections, but also by respecting the conditions that make it possible for the nation to live with itself in peace and through political dialogue. And here we also expressed during the 24th General Assembly of this organization, which was held in Asunción in June of 2024. At that time, we unequivocally condemned and resoundingly condemned the institutional interruption against the government at that time, which was also legitimately elected by the Bolivian people in October of 2020. At that time, like today, and as always, with any threat to a democratic or our region, we reaffirm the need to guarantee that any political differences find a solution only and exclusively through the constitutional order. This is why we understand that the current moment in Bolivia requires both a democratic commitment and caution, a rejection of violence and any attempt to destabilize the institutions. Caution to understand that many of the challenges that the country is facing are based on deep-seated structural rooted problems and cannot be solved in the short term or quickly. Decreasing fuel production, the scarcity, difficulties in supplies, and the unraveling of economic confidence are all complex problems which require a state solution that's historically viewed. The country will not attract more investment or create prosperity for people if there is based on violence. But also, challenges accumulated over the years cannot be resolved through circumstantial solutions or short-term solutions. Bolivia today needs more than ever sustained, broad support for long-term solutions and medium-term solutions to be put in place, inspired by the interests, the greater interests of the Bolivian people. With the authentic people and their will respected, the ability to listen, even in the midst of deep differences. We'd also like to recognize and thank Argentina for standing in solidarity, as well as other countries in the region, and their efforts to facilitate the supply of food, medicine, and other essential goods, which is a very worthwhile expression of hemispheric cooperation and commitment to the well-being of the Bolivian people. Madam Chair, it's useful to recall that the current Bolivian government has been in place for more than just a little over 6 months. It is not unreasonable to require, it would be unreasonable to require an immediate resolution of problems accumulated over many years, nor to ignore the legitimacy of the government that was democratically elected, or the efforts undertaken by Bolivian authorities in order to bring about agreement and understanding with different social sectors and productive sectors of the country. This shows that dialogue can lead to results when there's a will to do so, and when there's a desire to find national solutions. And it's precisely for that reason that we are concerned that minority radicalized sectors are persisting in their use of systematic blockades and confrontation with the political system, which gravely affects the people and weakens institutional stability of the country. The history of Latin America shows that democracies rarely collapse suddenly. Usually and often, it's a slow evolution due to the normalization of political violence and the very dangerous idea that any means is legitimate in order to achieve access to power. This is why what's happening in Bolivia, supporting Bolivia, is not about supporting one party. It means supporting a fundamental principle that no political project can be held above the Constitution, above institutions, or above the right of citizens to live in peace. President Rodrigo Paz has a mandate which was legitimately conferred upon him by the Bolivian people. Democracy, governments are supported or replaced through elections, not through coercion or violence. Blockades, which are destabilizing, or attempts to break the constitutional order ahead of time. That does not exclude criticism, protest, or disagreement. To the contrary, all healthy democracies need opposition, debate, and citizen oversight. But it's one thing to do that within democratic rules, and it's very different to try to replace them with violence and with electoral violent results don't satisfy some political aspirations. The Dominican Republic reaffirms its support for the constitutional order of Bolivia, the legitimately elected officials, and the right of the Bolivian people to live in peace, in democracy, and in a framework of institutional stability. We sincerely hope that Bolivia will be able, through dialogue, to find serenity, democratic responsibility, and political maturity as needed in order to constructively work towards resolving the current situation. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a usted.
Thank you, Minister Alvarez, for that message and for joining this session today. Now we will continue with the granting the floor to delegates that have requested it, starting with Argentina. Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues. I'd like to extend greetings to Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, and most especially, I'd like to thank the Minister and the Vice Minister from the plurinational state of Bolivia for participating in this session, and to send a warm greeting to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic. I'd also like to say that we very much value the information provided to this Council by the sister nation of Bolivia. The government of Argentina continues to follow with concern events unfolding in Bolivia, especially the humanitarian impact stemming from the protests and blockades of roads, which have affected the normal supply of food and necessary inputs for the people. Given this situation, Argentina would like to express that it stands in full solidarity with the government of Bolivia. The Republic of Argentina does not have an ambiguous position. This is not a time for ambiguity. Argentina reaffirms its rejection of any action geared to destabilizing the democratic order or altering the institutions or the constitutional government of the plurinational state of Bolivia, which was elected democratically in general elections, which took place in 2025. In that context, we believe that it's vital that all political and social actors channel their differences through institutional means, emphasizing dialogue, the respect of democratic authorities, and the preservation of social peace. Moreover, Argentina has sought to support that position with concrete action. In the context of the humanitarian mission of assistance to Bolivia, our country deployed the C-130 plane from Argentina to transport food to the Department of La Paz in Bolivia. This is an indication of my country's willingness to closely cooperate with the Bolivian authorities to meet the humanitarian needs on the ground. In the area of the OAS, as we've said before, we must reiterate the importance of defending the democratic order, institutional governance, and social peace in Bolivia. Democratic stability in our countries is not just an internal matter. It is also a shared value within the inter-American system. We need democratic neighbors because that is also working towards international security and helps us to combat transnational organized crime. It would seem that there are actors for whom democracy is only helpful when they win the elections. But they don't like democracy when they lose the elections. So there's a double standard here vis-a-vis the democracy. And that is why, as my government has expressed, the Republic of Argentina says we must have responsibility, dialogue, and the respective democratic institutions must prevail. And we reiterate our willingness to continue to support Bolivia in coordination with its authorities and to work to address the humanitarian situation and preserve institutional stability of the country. We said it in the case of Honduran elections. Preventative diplomacy is an instrument that the OAS can wield in order to strengthen democracy in our countries. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias a usted, embajador. Ahora tiene el uso.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to Uruguay, Ambassador Lanza. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to extend my greetings to the Secretary General and the Assistant Secretary General. And I would also like to extend my greetings to the Minister from Bolivia, Aramayo, and the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I'd like to thank you for the information provided in your presentation. Uruguay is carefully following the current situation and with concern as it's unfolding in the plurinational state of Bolivia. And in that context, we reaffirm our firm commitment to respect democratic institutions, that were established in the country, the rule of law, and human rights. I take this opportunity to express Uruguay's solidarity with Bolivian authorities that were legitimately elected and the Bolivian people in keeping with the purposes and principles enshrined of the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Charter. We would recall here that in the elections that were held in October of 2025, the Bolivian people expressed itself democratically and legitimately elected the current government of the plurinational state of Bolivia, headed by President Rodrigo Paz. It's also helpful to recall that the electoral observers from the OAS in Bolivia observed that elections unfolded with transparency and regularly and full respect of the sovereign people of Bolivia. Given this, we would call upon all actors to respect the people's will as an essential pillar for peaceful coexistence and bolstering institutions, democratic institutions of Bolivia. This is a right of the people, and the state is called upon to respect those rights and guarantee them. But the exercise to protest needs to be compatible with the situation on the ground and with preserving democratic order. Moreover, we encourage the government and all political and social actors in Bolivia to create sound mechanisms for dialogue, to work towards national reconciliation, understanding, with a view to promoting consensus-based solutions that will contribute to overcoming economic and social difficulties that the people are currently facing. Madam Chair, Uruguay reiterates its availability and willingness to support all efforts geared to preserving stability in Bolivia and to help it stay on the democratic path based on the full respect of the human rights of the Bolivian people. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to Paraguay, Ambassador Florentine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The delegation of the Republic of Paraguay takes the floor in this regular meeting to express its attentiveness with regards to the events that have been unfolding in the plurinational state of Bolivia, our sister country. We would also like to very specially greet thank Mr. Carrasco's comments, Minister of Foreign Relations of Bolivia, and the Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Mr. Carlos Paz Eden. We truly appreciate the report to this council, which has given us fundamental elements to be able to understand the real dimension and the complexity of the situation that that nation is going through. Madam Chairman, the Republic of Paraguay shares cultural, trade, geographic, historical, and sisterhood relations with Bolivia. There are decades of shared building of mutual cooperation and a common destiny as we build our South America. Precisely because of these unfailing effects that we observe with deep concern the impact of the current crisis. And that is why my delegation would like to ratify very ardently the joint declaration on the situation in Bolivia, which was recently subscribed to by the Republic of Paraguay, in keeping with the outstanding group of nations in our region. Through this instrument, we formally expressed our deep concern for the humanitarian situation that is unfolded in Bolivia, which has come about because of the blockages of roads and shortages where there are shortages of essential goods, food, and medicines which affect the well-being and the daily life of Bolivian citizens. In this distinguished Inter-American Forum, Paraguay reiterates its firmest rejection of all action or omission that is geared towards destabilizing the democratic order that has been established, or that aims to violently overturn the constitutional government of the plurinational state of Bolivia, which was legitimately and democratically elected by the popular will in the general elections in 2025. Preserving Republican institutionality and unbridled respect for the rule of law are cardinal principles which are not negotiable in the inter-American system. They are clearly wedded to our charter of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Madam Chairman, to conclude, then, the delegation of Paraguay reiterates its full-fledged solidarity with the constitutional government of Bolivia, of President Rodrigo Paz Pereira, and with all noble peoples of Bolivia. We would like to offer a clarion call, a vehement call to all social and economic actors to take on, to channel their legitimate differences, prioritizing institutions and peaceful movements ahead, and to move with dialogue, reciprocal respect of the institutions of the state, and for peace and social well-being. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now let's give the floor to the delegation of Brazil. Ambassador Belli, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Initially, I'd like to thank the Minister of Bolivia, Fernando Carrasco, as well as the Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Carlos Paz Eden, for their participation in this meeting and because of the information that they've offered to this Council. The Brazilian government accompanies with deep concern the internal situation in Bolivia and particularly the effects of the blockades and the picture of shortages and the humanitarian impact on La Paz and El Alto. We reaffirm our support to political stability and institutional stability of the country, our neighbor and a partner in Mercosur, and alongside our respect to the sovereignty and constitutional order. Brazil understands that the right to peaceful protest is enshrined in the Democratic Charter of the region, and the instruments for human rights are true the pillar of democracy. And as such, then, we consider that exercise of these rights should take place peacefully in keeping with human rights and with the local constitution to preserve physical integrity of all people. We urge all parties to contribute to reducing tension and to opening up and strengthening channels for dialogue with a view to identifying peaceful and long-lasting solutions. We also underscore the importance that eventual actions of the government when it comes to security be carried out with restraint, legality, and proportionality so as to avoid any exacerbation of the situation to protect civilians. This Council, it is the duty to offer a space for paying attention, solidarity, and to ensure the maintenance of prudence and responsibility. We trust in the capacity of institutions and the Bolivian people to overcome this situation through dialogue and social understanding. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, Ambassador Corona, you have the floor. Peru. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Peru truly appreciates calling to order this session and warmly greets. Warm greeting to the Minister of Foreign Relations of the plurinational state of Bolivia, Mr. Aramayo, as well as the participation of the Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Carlos Paz. Warm welcome, warm greetings. My delegation would like to express first and foremost its solidarity with the people and the government of Bolivia in the face of the complex situation that this sister nation is going through. Peru continues to be concerned with the events that have unfolded in the last few weeks, particularly the protests and the blockades that affect the supplies of essential goods and fuel, as well as the free movement of people, including foreign citizens. As a neighboring country, we have deep-seated historical, cultural ties, as well as the bilateral integration in areas such as trans-border water resources and transnational organized crime and other related issues. We are linked, so Peru feels this is crucial to have stability and democratic institutionality. It should be maintained in the plurinational state of Bolivia. Along this line, then, we reiterate our firm support to the constitutional government of President Rodrigo Paz Pereira, and we reject any and all actions that are geared to destabilize the democratic order or to alter the institutionality of a government that was legitimately elected democratically by the Bolivian people. Peru, alongside other countries in the region, has a joint declaration on the 15th of May in the situation in Bolivia, and through which we expressed our concern given the humanitarian effects and impact that come from this situation, and we reiterate our solidarity with the government and the people of Bolivia. As such, then, my delegation deems that all legitimate demands should be channeled through dialogue among all political and social Bolivian actors within the constitutional framework, with full-fledged respect of human rights, and in keeping with the principles that are enshrined in the Inter-American Democratic Charter. And finally, the delegation of Peru very much would like to reiterate its deep thanks to the government of Bolivia and the people of Bolivia for having made available on the 11th of May, Monday, the Bolivian Air Force and the 4 flights, 4 humanitarian flights that allowed for the safe return of many Peruvian citizens. Thank you very much for this very important hand of help, given the circumstances and given the protests that are taking place in this country. In this regard, then, we reiterate our willingness to continue to follow the Bolivian people and to provide all cooperation which might be required down the line. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Ambassador Savage from Canada. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Canada would like to thank Bolivia for having asked for the inclusion of the item on the agenda today. We would like to thank the Minister and Vice Minister for the presentations, as well as the opening up of the plurinational state of Bolivia to dialogue. Madam Chair, in English.
It demonstrates this body's role for hemispheric dialogue, transparency, and cooperation. Canada supports inclusive, peaceful dialogue within this forum and the use of all this organization's tools in support of the democratic and constitutional order and processes in Bolivia, in the shared interest of hemispheric stability, prosperity, and the well-being of the peoples of Bolivia and of all of the Americas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Muchas gracias a usted, embajador.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. The delegation of Costa Rica has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and good morning to everyone. The delegation of Costa Rica truly appreciates the virtual presentation of the Minister, Mr. Carrasco, and the presence of the Vice Minister, Carlos Castillo, in this session of the Permanent Council. We recognize the opening up of the government to expound on the situation that Bolivia is going through to member states. It is very complex. Costa Rica reaffirms the importance of dialogue, democratic institutionality, and the quest for peaceful solutions that allow for preserving stability and democratic coexistence and the well-being of Bolivian people. As such, then, we reiterate our willingness to accompany all of the efforts made to strengthen social peace based on the understanding and the developments that will take place. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. For the very first time, officially, Mr. Castro Chile has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank our participation online of Mr. Aramayo, Minister of Foreign Relations, and the presence of Mr. Carlos Paz Ibe, Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, who is present here. And undoubtedly, this underscores the grave situation that Bolivia is going through right now. And it also calls on us to think about what we can do precisely to support this country. On the 15th of May, our country, along with Argentina and other countries, 7 countries, members of the OAS, issued a joint declaration on the situation in which Bolivia finds itself. Today, the government of Chile reiterates its deep concern given the situation that the plurinational state of Bolivia is going through right now, and would like to offer its deep solidarity to this government and obviously to the people of Bolivia. We truly believe that this is an attempt to destabilize the democratic system. This is something very basic, which calls on us to raise our hands and to say, no, this is not possible. Chile recognizes and obviously supports this order of things led by President Paz. We feel that the right to assembly and protest of citizens should be in keeping with domestic rules, in keeping with a democratic society. We have taken due note that the government of Bolivia does have the legitimacy and authority to ensure internal order in a legal framework. And as such, then, we have to double up our efforts to guarantee social dialogue and in the hope that this resolves the crisis. And we would like to reiterate our concern, given the humanitarian situation in which millions of people find themselves right now in Bolivia. Madam Chairman, I would like to say we're committed to the promotion and to the defense of democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. These are fundamental pillars of our inter-American system. We reiterate, then, our solidarity with the government and, of course, with the Bolivian people, and we urge all political and social actors to channel their differences, prizing dialogue, the respect for institutions, and absolute preservation of social peace. And then, finally, Chile has the utmost willingness to study any initiative that Bolivia deems opportune within the framework of the competencies of this organization. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Colombia has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I would like to thank the virtual participation of the Minister of Foreign Relations of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, Mr. Aramayo, and the presence in the room of Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Carlos Paz. My delegation reaffirms its commitment to the principles and the attributes enshrined in the Charter of the Organization of American States and the Inter-American Democratic Charter, particularly those that are related to the preservation of democratic order and respect for the sovereignty and the independence of all states, the participation of people, and the peaceful solution of conflicts. We value the position of the plurinational state of Bolivia to ask that this situation be broached within the framework of the Permanent Council and exercise cooperation, transparency, dialogue, and hemispheric solidarity that guide how the inter-American system works. Colombia recognizes the importance of the OAS and the inter-American system as a legitimate space to promote understanding, to prevent any deepening of tensions, and to accompany all of the efforts that are geared toward preserving peace, stability, and institutional and democratic governance. In this regard, then, we deem it crucial that the responses to this situation be developed within the framework of the rule of law, prioritizing political dialogue, institutional channels, and the unbridled restriction of human rights and fundamental freedoms. As such, we reiterate the importance of strengthening a democracy that is increasingly participatory, inclusive, and representative, which is able to channel the social demands through peaceful means, institutions, and through democracy, guaranteeing political pluralism and the separation and independence of public branches and the full-fledged use of human rights. Colombia laments this is an unfortunate announcement by the Bolivian government of declaring persona non grata Isabel Garcia Carrillo, an indigenous Waka person who works as ambassador of Colombia to the plurinational state of Bolivia since the end of 2022. Madam Ambassador was a victim of an armed conflict, violence, and consolidated and huge career in the defense of human rights, migratory justice, and gender equality. Our country laments this decision, which is far removed from relations and fraternal relations that our nations have historically had. Colombia once again renews its position to accompany, if requested, unrestricted respect for sovereignty and self-determination of the Bolivian people. The initiatives that are geared towards contributing to a peaceful, democratic, institutional, and constitutional solution of the current situation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Guatemala has the floor. Ambassador Escobar. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The delegation of Guatemala respectively greets the Minister of Foreign Relations of Bolivia, His Excellency Fernando Aramayo Carrasco, and recognizes the presence of Vice Minister of Foreign Relations of the plurinational state of Bolivia, Carlos Paz. We would like to thank both of them for their participation and their presentation on the internal situation in their country. Guatemala would like to reiterate its solidarity with the government of President Paz and the Bolivian people, given the complex situation that prevails right now in the country. We observe with deep concern the humanitarian consequences and the impact given the blockades of roads, and particularly the supplies of foodstuffs, essential goods, and medicine that affect the population. In this context, then, my delegation would like to reiterate the spirit of a joint communique, which was from the 15th of May, alongside other countries of the region, through which we expressed our concern given the actions and situations that could lead to tensions when it concerns democratic institutionality and the normal workings in the plurinational state of Bolivia. And at the same time, Guatemala reaffirms the importance of full-fledged respect and guarantee of human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the right to peaceful protest, freedom of expression, and the right of assembly. These are cornerstones of all democratic societies. Guatemala considers it fundamental that political and social differences be channeled through peaceful means, through institutions, and in all due respect of the rule of law, in keeping with the political constitution and the laws of the plurinational state of Bolivia. In this regard, we would like to offer a clarion call to all political and social actors to prioritize dialogue, to come together and to have peaceful coexistence, avoiding any actions that can deepen or exacerbate tensions or affect the well-being of the population. And at the same time, Guatemala reaffirms the importance of its collective commitment of this organization to defend democracy, institutionality, human rights, and the constitutional order of our member states, in keeping with the principles of the Charter of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ambassador Encinas from Mexico. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The delegation of Mexico truly appreciates and has taken due note of the information that was shared by Minister and the Vice Minister of the plurinational state of Bolivia on the situation that prevails in their country and goes along with the expressions of concern given the recent events. Mexico offers a respectful call to prioritize political dialogue, to avoid all forms of violence and repression, and to channel social demands through the institutional and democratic mechanisms as wedded to the constitutional order of Bolivia, to the rule of law, and full-fledged respect of human rights. In keeping with the guiding principles of the foreign policy of Mexico, and particularly the intervention for peaceful solution to controversies and conflicts, we reiterate that it is up to the Bolivian people exclusively through their own democratic institutions and without any external intervention to follow the path of solving the challenges that they are confronted with now. We truly hope that social peace prevails in Bolivia with full-fledged respect for human rights and constructive and peaceful dialogue between and among all actors as the way to resolve any political and social challenges that the country is grappling with. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ecuador has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The Republic of Ecuador truly appreciates the presentations of His Excellency Fernando Ramayo Carrasco, Minister of Foreign Relations of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, and Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Carlos Paz Ibe. The Republic of Ecuador has followed the complex internal situation that the people of Bolivia are going through and rejects any attempt to destabilize the democratic order that emerged from the elections of 2025, marked by the Bolivian people to freely elect their government, their leader. We understand that democracy for economic and social development of people of the Americas is what needs to be. And as such, then, the Republic of Ecuador expresses its deep concern for the actions that have led to the shortage of foodstuffs and medicine for the population, as well as for other things that have precluded having medical care. This delicate humanitarian situation restricts access to essential rights, such as the right to life and the right to personal integrity, which are enshrined in the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights. The Republic of Ecuador makes a clarion call to all the political and social actors to prioritize dialogue to solve the current differences, as well as to make necessary efforts to preserve the democratic institutionality and to reestablish social peace in this sister nation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The delegation of Panama has the floor. Ambassador Delgado, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The delegation of the Republic of Panama would like to first and foremost express its deep-seated thanks for the very valuable presentations made by His Excellency Fernando Aramayo Carrasco, Minister of Foreign Relations of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, as well as for Mr. Carlos Paz Ibe, Vice Minister of Foreign Relations of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. Their comments have allowed this council to hear firsthand the views and the concerns of the Bolivian government with regards to the current political and institutional situation that their country is going through, thus reaffirming the importance of hemispheric dialogue and cooperation amongst our states. Panama attentively is following the recent events in the plurinational state of Bolivia and would like to reiterate very clearly and firmly its support to the government and the people of Bolivia, as well as the constitutionally elected president, Mr. Rodrigo Paz, in the face of any attempt to destabilize that will overlook the sovereign mandate expressed democratically via elections. For the Republic of Panama, representative democracy is a sine qua non. It's an undeniable value in the inter-American system. Popular will, freely expressed by citizens through electoral legitimate processes, should be respected by all political and social actors. This should be done within the framework of the Constitution and the laws. Stability of our nations depends on strengthening democratic institutions, full-fledged respect for the rule of law, and the preservation of the institutional order. In this regard, my delegation deems it crucial and fundamental to reaffirm that political differences should be solved exclusively through democratic dialogue, through institutional mechanisms, and through constitutional channels that have been established. No society can consolidate social peace nor guarantee the well-being of its citizens through acts that will affect the institutional order or generate any tensions that are incompatible with respect for democratic rules. We recognize that democratic plurality and debate are a natural part of all free societies. Nonetheless, they should be developed within the parameters of respect. There should be mutual respect, tolerance, and abide by the constitutional order. The defense of democracy calls for collective responsibility and a permanent commitment to peaceful coexistence with all due respect to fundamental rights and the normal functioning of institutions of the state. My dear colleague, Madam Chairman, the Charter of the Organization of American States and the Inter-American Democratic Charter enshrine fundamental principles that oblige our states and call on our states to promote and protect democratic institutions. These instruments are essential pillars for preservation of peace, for stability, and for hemispheric cooperation. And that is why it is imperative to reject any mechanism of pressure or any action that aims to overlook citizens' will or to overturn any democratic function of the state. The Republic of Panama feels that social democratic challenges that confront our democracy require dialogue and understanding and a strengthening of all institutions. It is only through unbridled respect of legality and democratic processes can we build more fair, just, inclusive, and resilient societies. Right now, the Republic of Panama once again expresses its solidarity with the people of Bolivia and offers a clarion call to have stability and peaceful democratic coexistence, which are principles that are indispensable to strengthen our societies and the inter-American democratic system. We reiterate our trust and confidence in the capacity of the people and Bolivian institutions to overcome their challenges within the constitutional and democratic framework with full-fledged respect to popular sovereignty. These are values that we share as a hemispheric community. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now we have a list of speakers from the permanent observer missions that are accredited to the member to the organization. We have a request. I'm sorry, says the speaker. I have a request from the United States before I give the floor to the delegation of Spain. We would first like to give the floor to Ambassador Risotto. Ambassador, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States is deeply concerned about the ongoing riots, blockades in Bolivia and the harm they cause to the Bolivian people, including severe food, fuel, and medical supply shortages. The United States supports President Paz, who is democratically elected by the people of Bolivia and Bolivia's democratic institutions. We want them to succeed in addressing the mismanagement and the President Paz inherited from the previous mass government. We urge protesters to reject violence and pursue dialogue to resolve differences. The United States condemns any attempts to undermine Bolivia's democratic process through violence or intimidation. And the stability is essential for Bolivia's economic recovery as the well-being of its citizens. We welcome regional support, including humanitarian assistance, to address immediate needs. The United States stands in solidarity with the democratically elected President of Bolivia, Rodrigo Paz, and we are ready to support efforts that promote democratic governance and economic development and safety of all Bolivians. As a collective body, we are witness to a period of global disorder. It is in the steadfast interest of the United States that an expedient, peaceful resolution be realized in Bolivia and around the world, and certainly within our own house, demonstrating that by standing together, we could foster stability here and around the world. The United States would also like to recognize the member states that have immediately and voluntarily provided assistance to Bolivia and thank them for that effort. We therefore emphasize the importance that this body considers increasing its disaster fund that is currently capped at $25,000 per incident to have a minimum $1 million base and an immediate goal of $10 million through members, permanent observers, and private contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. Y ahora continuamos.
Now we'll continue by giving the floor to Ambassador Monton from Spain. You have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General. We would like to recognize the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the plurinational state of Bolivia, Minister Alamayo, and Vice Minister Carlos Paz. We carefully listened to your presentations, and in this context, we would encourage the Bolivian government to continue prioritizing dialogue and negotiation with the various actors with a view to finding solutions to the current crisis and setting aside the use of repressive measures to stop the protests. We also recognize what the government of Bolivia has been doing to promote peaceful coexistence vis-a-vis the intolerance and political confrontation. As was indicated, they firmly condemned the burning of Vipala during the mobilizations of the 18th of May and their commitment to the respect of patriotic symbols and to the history and diversity of the country. Moreover, I would like to be a spokesperson for the joint statement of the European Union of the 19th of May on the situation in Bolivia. The delegation of the European Union, with all of the embassies of the European Union in Bolivia, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, have issued the following statement. Months before the declaration of general elections, which were exemplary, and given the events unfolding in Bolivia, the European Union and its member states call for peace, calm, and dialogue, respecting dialogue, the constitutional order, and respecting the state's institutions, and firmly condense any acts of violence. The European Union also recalls that demonstrations and protests should take place in a peaceful manner with the full respect of the rule of law and human rights. Thank you.
Gracias a usted, embajadora.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning to all. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bolivia, Fernando Aramayo Carrasco, Vice Minister Carlos Paz Ide, distinguished ambassadors, Madam Assistant Secretary General, colleagues of the General Secretariat, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thanking the plurinational state of Bolivia for bringing this important matter to the attention of the Permanent Council. Bolivia's decision to do so, accompanied by the clear and substantive presentations of the Foreign Minister and the Vice Minister, with whom I had the pleasure yesterday not only to receive and welcome to the OAS, but also to have frank and open discussions. It reflects the enduring value of this hemispheric forum as a space to converge, to deliberate, and to build responses that strengthen our democracies and expand governance to include more citizens. Madam Chair, it is that shared conviction that the General Secretariat takes the floor today to make a contribution on this agenda item. We express our concern regarding the unfolding situation in the plurinational state of Bolivia. We are following closely the events of recent days, the social mobilizations and the disruptions to public order that have affected the Bolivian people. We recognize that Bolivia is navigating an extraordinarily difficult moment, a convergence of political challenges, institutional pressure, and severe economic crisis compounded by the global energy transition and the fragility of international markets. These are challenges that no government faces alone, and no government, in our view, should be expected to resolve without the support of the international community and the domestic environment. In that context, the General Secretariat expresses its support for the constitutionally elected, democratically elected government led by President Paz and all the democratic institutions of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Democratic governance is not only a right of people, but also the indispensable framework within which all social, economic, and political challenges can and must be addressed. Undermining such institutions does not resolve crises. In our view, it deepens them. We therefore unequivocally condemn all acts of violence, regardless of their origin. Violence and the obstruction of fundamental social and medical services have no place in a democratic society. The use of illegitimate force cannot be accepted, tolerated, or justified under any circumstance. We call on all actors, therefore, to renounce violence as a tool of political action. The General Secretariat also calls for the full guarantee of fundamental human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, and due process for all. Democratic legitimacy rests on electoral mandates and on the continuous respect for the rights of citizens. To that end, we urge all parties to commit to a meaningful, inclusive, and results-oriented dialogue. Dialogue and communication with society are the highest expressions of democratic maturity. History has shown, time and again, that societies that chose conversation over confrontation emerged stronger and more cohesively. Bolivia has the institutional capacity and the leadership of President Paz to find the path forward. Madam Chair, the combination of genuine dialogue and strong, inclusive institutions is not merely a procedural standard. It is the foundation of democratic societies in these complex times we live in. In an hemisphere facing the consequences of global energy disruptions, inflationary pressures, and rising social inequality, democratic resilience is built through dialogue and communication, participation, and accountability. The General Secretariat of the Organization of American States stands ready to collaborate, to offer support, good offices, and/or advice to the government and people of Bolivia according to its mandates and in whatever capacity is useful and welcomed by the country. In support of democracy, peace, institutional stability, and the well-being of the Bolivian people. I thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, dear Secretary General. Now, le vamos a dar la palabra a
And now we'll give the floor to Bolivia. I don't know if we give the floor to the minister or the vice minister. Thank you, says the vice minister. I'd just like to, on behalf of the plurinational state of Bolivia, express our most deep-seated gratitude to all the members for their statements of support and for their support undertaken to support action for democracy and promoting constitutional order in our country. We especially value the demonstrations of solidarity and the humanitarian support provided by the distinguished delegations of Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, and the United States. Their support has been a concrete expression of commitment to the principles and democratic values that we share in this hemisphere. Finally, Bolivia reaffirms its commitment to dialogue, peace, democratic institutions, and cooperation amongst our states. And we do so convinced that hemispheric solidarity is vital to preserve stability and the well-being of our people. Thank you. Thank you, says the chair. As there are no further requests for the floor, the chair would like to once again thank the distinguished authorities from the plurinational state of Bolivia, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, and all the delegations who took the floor today. The Secretary General, I would like to, we take due note of all of these statements, and we very much appreciate your participation and for enriching this important dialogue today. We very much value the commitment expressed by all states, commitment to preserving democratic institutions, the rule of law, and social peace in Bolivia. And from the chair, we respectfully call upon all social and political actors to emphasize dialogue, understanding, and democratic and institutional means to address the challenges facing that sister nation. We also respectfully urge the delegation of Bolivia and the Secretariat General, as its is its purview to maintain the Permanent Council informed on the evolution of the political situation, the humanitarian situation, and institutional situation in that member state, so we can take action as deemed necessary and relevant. If there are no objections, it is so agreed. We now move on to the next item of our agenda, strategic partnerships for the common good of the Americas, impact of the private sector on the work of this organization. On this item of the agenda, we'd like to mention that this is one of the priorities promoted by the chair of Costa Rica in this period where we're honored to be at the helm of the Permanent Council. We'd like to promote an enriching dialogue, enriching by opportunities for cooperation between member states and financial institutions, international financial institutions, and the private sector. All of this is in benefit for comprehensive development of the Americas and integral development of the Americas. You have the concept note based on the premise that effective multilateralism that's results-oriented. We worked with this initiative to increase collaboration between strategic actors and recognizing the value of public-private partnerships and multi-sectoral participation to address socioeconomic challenges and the development of our region. These ideas are based on the ideas and principles supported by member states in promoting the fundamental values of the organization, which highlight the very close relationship between democracy, development, inclusion, and shared prosperity. The chair would also like to express its recognition and gratitude to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Institutional Affairs of the Office of the Secretary General, and of course the Secretary General himself for his very helpful support in coordinating this topic and the strengthening of the relationship between the organization and strategic actors in the private sector and in international financial institutions. To start today's dialogue, as a reference to the chair, it's my pleasure to start by giving the floor to start our panel, Mr. Albert Ramdin, Secretary General of the Organization of American States. The Secretary General is not taking the floor as a speaker because we have three panelists who will be speaking, but since this is an initiative that is fed by the work of the Secretary General, I would like to give him the floor first as a reference, so he can also provide us with the context and tell us about all the work that's done by the Secretariat to strengthen these strategic partnerships for the well-being of the Americas and the common good of it. And also to speak from his office and provide us with an intersectional dialogue, an intersectoral dialogue with the private sector, academia, multilateral financial institutions. So today we are starting with this conversation with a focus on the private sector, and we very much appreciate that the Secretary General will be providing us with a framework for today's discussion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I must say greetings to all, especially our representatives of the Latin American Business Council, the Caribbean Chambers of Commerce, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Madam Chair, distinguished ambassadors, our colleagues from the Secretariat. First of all, I want to thank Ambassador Solano, the President of the Permanent Council, for taking the initiative to convene this meeting and to start the discussion. I think this is very timely and necessary, and I hope this debate will continue as it is one of our focal points in our work. Simply because the future of our hemisphere depends strongly on not only the dialogue among governments, but also on stronger cooperation between the private sector among themselves and the cooperation and dialogue between governments and private sector. The well-being of our societies and our people is a shared responsibility. It is not only governments alone. It is also other resources in our, and other groups, segments in our society, the private sector, the civil society, the trade unions, all are responsible for creating peace, and prosperity in our hemisphere and in our societies. So that's why I feel that this conversation, Madam Chair, is timely, and thank you very much again. The Americas are navigating a period of profound economic, technological, and geopolitical transformation, accompanied by increasing pressures on institutions, competitiveness, and social cohesion across our hemisphere. And yet, this moment also presents significant opportunities for our region. We are rich in energy resources. We can be energy secure in our hemisphere. We have an enormous biodiversity, which brings specific responsibilities. We have talent. We have hardworking people. We have entrepreneurship in our region, innovation, and strategic geographic positioning. All elements, and these are not all, but some of them, which provides an opportunity to be successful. To unlock this potential, we must create conditions that allow prosperity to flourish. This requires stronger institutions, democratic stability, legal certainty, investment, confidence, and stronger regional cooperation. It is in this spirit that we seek to engage the private sector as partners in building stronger, more resilient, and more prosperous societies across the hemisphere. I see the contribution of the private sector not as a social responsibility, or as normally is called CSR, corporate social responsibility. I see it clearly, and this is what we have communicated on many occasions since I took office. It is their obligation. It is an investment for the benefit of themselves, because they need a politically sound, stable climate. They need proper functioning governments to be able, and rule of law, to be able to produce what they're capable of. So it is also in their interest. So their responsibility doesn't end by just acknowledging, but investing in strengthening democracy, human rights, and governance. So our objective is to do, as I mentioned before, Madam Chair, to advance a shared, a common peace and prosperity agenda for the Americas. An agenda focusing on strengthening democratic governance, creating a just, free, fair, equal society, promoting stability and the rule of law and security in order to facilitate the expansion of intra-regional trade, investments, and integration. Ambassadors, distinguished guests, prosperity also matters for stability. Prosperity strengthens democracy, creates resilience, and helps reduce insecurity, inequality, and polarization. Economic opportunity and democratic stability are deeply interconnected. We cannot separate one from the other. The private sector has an essential role to play in this effort. Businesses bring innovation, technology, efficiency, investment capacity, entrepreneurship, and practical solutions. And institutions like the Organization of American States contribute by promoting democratic governance, transparency, institutional stability, legal certainty, security, strong functioning judicial systems, and regional cooperation. These are all mutually reinforcing responsibilities. In this regard, supporting democratic stability and institutional strength in the Americas should also be viewed as a smart investment for the private sector. When countries are stable, businesses are more likely to invest, expand operations, and create jobs. When societies are safer, businesses face lower operational risks and lower security-related costs. And when governance improves, confidence improves, and investment flows. Today, our region still faces important structural gaps. Intra-regional trade remains significantly lower than in Europe and in parts of Asia. Too much of our productive capacity and investment potential continues to flow outside the region instead of strengthening our own economies and the prosperity of our people. At the same time, we cannot afford to fall behind in emerging technologies. This requires investments not only in infrastructure, but also in people, in education, and institutional modernization. And these are challenges that require stronger public-private cooperation. We are moving from vision to action. Last year, I signed a memorandum of understanding with the Latin American Business Council, CEL, represented today by Mr. Roberto Zamora, With this MOU, we seek to strengthen cooperation in real ways in areas aligned with the work of the OAS, including economic and social development across the region. Since then, we began coordinating an important initiative to support education, social inclusion, and food security in Haiti. We look forward to adding new partners to formally launch this initiative, including by attracting investors to promote economic growth in Haiti once the security conditions allow for that. We are also preparing a high-level dialogue with the private sector during the upcoming OAS General Assembly in Panama, together with SEAL and Meridian Corporate Council, where we will focus on issues central to the future competitiveness and development of the Americas, including energy, artificial intelligence, digital transformation, skills for the future, investments, and trade facilitation. I hope our friends from other chambers of commerce can also join us in Panama. We will be sharing more details with member states shortly. Within the organization, Madam Chair, we have also created an interdepartmental working group on the private sector to strengthen internal coordination and better align the OAS around the peace and prosperity agenda for the Americas. This effort also seeks to better coordinate initiatives with the Young Americas Business Trust, the Trust for the Americas, and the Pan American Development Foundation. Let me conclude with one final point. Engagement with the private sector will become regular, institutionalized, and action-oriented. We will work together to establish flexible mechanisms for continued dialogue and cooperation beyond today and beyond Panama, with the objective of advancing our mandates and ultimately peace and prosperity for the people of the Americas. The challenges before are indeed significant, but so are the opportunities. And I remain optimistic about what this hemisphere can achieve when governments, the private sector, international and regional institutions, as well as civil society, work together with this shared responsibility and a long-term vision for prosperity and peace. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General. Muchísimas gracias por...
Thank you very much for the efforts being undertaken from the Secretary to facilitate the dialogue among strategic partners for the benefit of the Americas, to promote more cooperation and venues for dialogue. Also, part of the initiative of Costa Rica's chairmanship is to coordinate the space for discussion amongst member states and to provide direct access to the high-level dialogue of the private sector, which the Secretary General just mentioned, which will take place in the context of the 56th General Assembly regular session under the topic entitled Towards a Prosperity Agenda, Positioning the Americas to Leverage a New Wave of Opportunity. And this should also contribute to promoting innovative solutions, drive investment, and bolster a modern agenda for shared prosperity for the Americas. Now, we will begin with our panel of invited guests. This is entitled Building Resilient and Prosperous Societies, the Contribution of the Private Sector. And with that, I'd like to extend greetings to and offer the floor to, first of all, Madam Ann McKinney, Vice President of the Americas U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Mrs. McKinney is here in the room with us, and I thank you for being here. Your participation is very helpful to us.
Madam Chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Alejandra Solano, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Albert Ramdin, Assistant Secretary General Laura Hill, permanent representatives of member states and permanent observers, good morning and thank you. On behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank the Permanent Council for the opportunity to speak about the private sector's role in building resilient and prosperous societies and the importance of strategic partnerships to advance the common good of the Americas. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the world's largest business association, representing businesses of all sizes and sectors of the economy, from small businesses that anchor main streets across the United States to large corporations that contribute to economic growth in the countries represented here today and around the globe. The Chamber brings together state and local chambers, business and industry associations from across the United States, and we work in partnership with a network of 130 American Chambers of Commerce, or AmChams, around the globe. We're honored to serve as the home of the Association of American Chambers of Commerce in Latin America and the Caribbean, ACLA, which unites the chambers and 22 AmChams that operate in the region around our shared mission to deepen trade and investment between the United States and the countries of the Americas. Across the Americas and around the world, the U.S. Chamber champions free enterprise, builds consensus around complex policy challenges, and works to empower companies to grow, compete, and create opportunity and growth. We hold firmly to the conviction that the free enterprise system has done more to advance the human condition than any other model, enabling businesses to respond swiftly to consumer needs, solve complex problems, and raise living standards. Strong democratic institutions are vital for creating the conditions in which businesses, workers, and all citizens can reach their full potential. At the Chamber, we believe in the power of business to solve problems, improve lives, and strengthen communities. We also believe that governments play a critical role in building the enabling environment for businesses to grow, create jobs, innovate, and contribute to broad-based prosperity. Neither the private sector nor governments can achieve these objectives alone. Public-private dialogue and collaboration are essential for delivering solutions to shared challenges and unlocking opportunities to drive economic growth and job creation. That is why at the Chamber we are actively engaged in promoting opportunities for governments and business to work hand in hand to build a stronger, more competitive environment to enable businesses to drive sustainable development through trade and development in the Americas. Above all, the rule of law remains a top priority for business. In today's global economy, access to and respect for the rule of law is the cornerstone of a robust economy and the foundation upon which healthy international investment, trade, and capital flows depend. As part of the Chamber's commitment to strengthening the rule of law, we founded the Coalition for the Rule of Law in Global Markets more than 10 years ago. Next month, the Chamber will launch the latest edition of its Global Rule of Law and Business Dashboard, which provides an enhanced tool to measure and understand the needs of business within a rule of law context and key factors to drive economic growth. The dashboard tracks 5 core pillars critical to business success and economic growth, including transparency, predictability, stability, accountability, and due process. The new dashboard will provide a deeper analysis of these underlying factors for each pillar to promote and provide governments and stakeholders with new tools to identify opportunities to strengthen the rule of law. Continuing to expand trade across the hemisphere and around the globe is another priority for the Chamber and our members. Trade generates more than jobs and prosperity. It strengthens the ties between our countries and promotes stability. That's why the Chamber supports high-standard enforceable trade agreements that eliminate barriers to trade, provide businesses with transparent and predictable legal and regulatory frameworks, strengthen customs administration and trade facilitation, provide rules for digital trade, and promote innovation and the protection of intellectual property rights, among other critical conditions to strengthen trade and investment. Multi-stakeholder partnerships can further strengthen regional trade agreements through cooperation around good regulatory practices, trade facilitation, supply chain security, and the internationalization of small and medium companies. Other priority areas for public-private collaboration and partnerships include building resilient healthcare systems. The private sector is a long-term partner in building resilient healthcare systems, improving access to quality care, incentivizing innovation, and ensuring sustainable financing models. Workforce development. Investing in people is investing in our shared prosperity. We believe that fostering partnerships that equip workers with the skills needed to thrive in today's rapidly evolving economy. Strengthening micro, small, and medium enterprises is another priority. SMEs are the backbone of economies across the region. fostering entrepreneurship, and building the capacity of small, medium enterprises to grow and compete will drive local economic growth and resilient supply chains. Quality infrastructure investment, catalyzing private sector investment in modern, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure is critical to the region's long-term competitiveness and connectivity. Energy security and critical minerals development. Expanding energy security and responsibly developing critical minerals are foundational to economic resilience, supply chain diversification, and the energy transition. Embracing the digital economy and innovation with a focus on business innovation, technology adoption, and the transformative potential of generative AI is key to unlocking the next generation of growth and competitiveness. These are not isolated priorities. They are interconnected pillars of a shared prosperity agenda that requires governments and the private sector, multilateral organizations, and international financial institutions to work together. We welcome the commitment of the OAS and its member governments to foster an open dialogue with the private sector and actively pursue new partnerships for a resilient and prosperous Americas region. The U.S. Chamber, working together with member companies, AmChams, the regional private sector, looks forward to being a constructive partner in these endeavors. We too.
Please, Ms. McKinney, you can proceed and finish your statement. Please, no more than 1 minute. Thank you.
We share the optimism that working together, we can accomplish more. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great statement. Thank you so much. We appreciate your words and looking forward to strengthen that collaboration with you at the AmCham of the United States of America, Madam Vice President. And now, continue.
Let's continue now with our next item on the agenda. That is to say, we're really very happy to have Mr. Zamora, who is connected. Mr. Roberto Zamora, he's the president of the Latin American Business Council, SEAL. The secretary mentioned, and we confirmed this from the secretariat, and we have an agreement with SEAL. So I truly appreciate that Mr. Zamora is here with us. He's connected, so without further ado, I'll give him the floor. Thank you very much, Roberto. Be welcome. Good morning, Secretary General of the OAS, Mr. Alberto Ramdin. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman of the Permanent Council, Alejandra Solano. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Ambassador for opening up this opportunity for a dialogue, and the Secretary General, Mr. Alberto Ramdin, for his leadership and for the opening up that he has evinced to the private sector in our region. SEAL is an organization that represents the main business people in the private sector in Latin America. And Latin American Business Council truly values the work that the Secretary General of the OAS has pushed forward, particularly given the ability to open up opportunities and spaces for conversation with the private sector and to convene different meetings with different business people and leaders from the region. We understand that the private sector has or plays a fundamental role in building solutions to take on the challenges in the Americas. Within this framework, then, the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with the OAS formalized the will to work together and emphasizes support to Haiti, signed in November last during our plenary assembly, which was held in Washington. Haiti today requires a coordinated response, and the private sector and the public sector and international financial organizations and other actors step up to contribute to the new opportunities. In this regard, I recognize the efforts that the Secretary General has spearheaded, including a blueprint to accompany the country as it builds stability and safe conditions. From this standpoint, we reiterate our willingness to accompany these efforts, and from our business network and our regional wherewithal, we will make a contribution. as the private sector, we have $200,000 that we have used to offer a border area educational project with the Dominican Republic. We are waiting to have a counterpart amount from the OAS and the Inter-American Development Bank of another similar amount of resources to have greater impact, since the implementer as well as the quick internet will be playing a role as well. And this is the right tack, and hopefully we can kick off all of this very soon. Our view is very clear cut to contribute to a more integrated and competitive Latin America. And in this regard, we truly value all of the work that has been carried out, particularly in fundamental issues in areas such as education, inclusion, and health security, areas in which the private sector can make a very specific contribution to promote development and well-being in the region. In the same spirit, then, I should like to share with you something which is important to us. Similarly, as the government of the United States has created Select USA, an initiative that allows foreign investors to know the positive aspects of investing in the United States. From SEAL's standpoint, we are promoting Select Latin America. This initiative aims to create a regional platform to underscore investment opportunities in Latin America, to connect projects with investors, and to strengthen dialogue between business people, governments, and promotion agencies, multilateral organizations, and other institutions that are interested in the development of the region. For this project, Select Latin America, it is crucial to have the support from each and every one of our countries to get information on the projects available that can participate and in which foreign investors can participate. The first version of Select Latin America will be launched on the 12th and 13th of November in Washington. This will be done within the framework of the 37th plenary session of SEAL. This will be an opportunity to present the potential of Latin America, to promote new alliances, open up dialogues and conversations that can lead to growth and investments for our country. Our region has talent, resources, productive capacity, innovation, and sales capacity. What we need is to continue to build bridges so that we can transform this potential into concrete projects. Secretary General, Madam Chairman of the Permanent Council, distinguished representatives, the private sector is ready to invest, build, and be part of the solutions that our region needs. We reiterate our commitment to continue to work for a more integrated Latin America. We believe that this path, with the support of the OAS and all of you, will continue to put Latin America on the map and at the center of opportunities. We will continue to build together a region with more development and more hope. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very inspiring speech, Mr. Roberto. And we truly look forward to this cooperation that you've just mentioned. Without further ado, we'd like to give the floor to Mr. Martin Cave, Chair of the Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce and Executive Director of Antigua and Barbuda Chamber of Commerce. We would like to give the floor to Mr. Cave and let you know that you have 7 minutes to speak to this very important topic on the agenda today. Mr. Cave, you have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I'd like to say greetings to the Secretary General, to Madam Chair of the Permanent Council, Secretary General Albert Ramden, the Assistant Secretary General, attending diplomats, country representatives, delegates, and staff of the Secretariat. This morning, thank you very much for the invitation to the Network of Caribbean Chambers, CARICHAM. Firstly, let me say that in observing the objectives of the OAS, among the four stated objectives, I'd like to speak on two, primarily the economic development and secondarily the regional cooperation. As we consider our geographical layout of our hemisphere, it's almost impossible to consider a region that's not connected. Whereas with the western part of our hemisphere, there's virtually a continuous terrestrial continuum. On the eastern side, the linkages by islands interspersed by waters, offering an alternative means to communicate, but surely we consider ourselves a connected people. And while for several different languages we may falter in communicating for the most part, the commonness of our origin and with the majority of our migrants being from the eastern continent gives us another pillar of similarity. With respect to economic development, I want to say that our geography and in-person connectivity should bode well for us to pursue hemispheric trade vigorously. Our hemisphere is blessed with continuing countries that possess huge amounts of arable lands, industrial giants, unsurpassed military might, superior computer related technologies, well trained populace, vast amounts of rare earth minerals and carbon deposits to last well into the foreseeable future. And this should give us a competitive advantage when compared with other regions and hemispheres. We also have diverse landscapes that should prompt us to desire and explore. If we continue to put down our barriers, respect each other's national sovereignty, the trade that we desire among us should be much more cost effective. My organization, CARICHAM, represents national chambers in 25 of our Caribbean countries, from the Bahamas in the north to Cayenne in the south, from Barbados in the east to Belize in the west, and most of the islands between. And the truth is that while many CARICHAM countries are looking to increase interregional trade with each other, there still continue to be a few barriers. We would therefore consider it a tremendous benefit to be able to expand trade greatly with all the countries in Latin America, and thus expand our intra-regional business and so expand our economies to promote peace in the region, to promote jobs and opportunities. While many of our Caribbean countries or member states may not have huge amounts of minerals, among CARICHAM members, we have some of the most idyllic beaches and consequently places of leisure and relaxation, because the hard work should also be balanced by the necessary tranquility to recharge the very resources necessary for greater productivity. In CARICHAM, we have the following pillars. We have private sector, we promote private sector resilience, we promote trade and business development, or membership value and knowledge sharing for our members, communication, and good governance. CARICHAM countries, manufacturing, while hemispherically on a smaller scale, is also conducted among our members, but smaller does not sacrifice quality, but it usually enhances it. And greater care is given when used to generate our products. CARICHAM countries are and have been for many years leaders in producing fresh fruits and vegetables, along with animals raised in clean and humane conditions, which positively affect our lives and as we learn from our ancestors, this is now becoming the way of life that is seen as optimal. Some of our member nations have now become world leaders in energy products and as energy producers, which we embrace and we hope will continue to embrace for some time. as we consider the numerous types of energy which we have been blessed to have. We encourage the use of all types of energy to the advancement and employment of our people. We therefore encourage you to take advantage of the investment opportunities that present themselves with the CARICOM, not just CARICOM, but also CARICHAM countries, as we have numerous things to offer. On another matter, we consider the regional security cooperation. We understand that back in 1826, in the Congress of Panama, Simon Bolivar and Jose de San Martin desired to have a League of Americas, which was formally established in 1948 in Bogota as the Organization of American States. And while I've heard various interventions this morning of the concerns that have been expressed by delegates about the very country that bears the name of one of the original conveners and conceivers of this very assembly in Bolivia. In Antigua and Barbuda, the country that I serve as operational head of the chamber, we had recently held elections, and while there was not a change of parties, there was a change of government. But there's always been peaceful transitions of administrations. I can only hope that this civil practice will prevail among us. It is therefore with this emphasis that I'd like us to reflect on the very reason why we can continue to grow economies. We do that in a time and a place of peace, and civil peace should be practiced among us. It is therefore necessary for us to have this very grave concern about what's happening in Haiti today. We understand that security for individuals is tenuous, and commercial activity has decreased considerably. That
Thank you very much, Mr. Cave. Can you please close your statement in 1 minute? Please, thank you, sir. You are in mute, sir.
at a regional meeting with a delegate from Haiti, he suggested that Jamaica had been a country with a lot of gangs and Haiti was little concerned. Today, we consider the violence in Haiti as a virus that can spread. If we do not take timely and effective actions, we can see a degradation of our countries and consequently our economies. We do not wish that to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much for bringing your reflections from CARICHAM and for sharing Caribbean perspective on this importance of strengthening regional cooperation. You spoke about some of the pillars on which CARICHAM's work is founded, and we truly appreciate the strategic alliances that allows us to see it and you as a tool to promote more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable development in the Americas. Thank you very much, Mr. Cave, for your very valuable statement and the information shared. Now, let's give the floor to delegations who wish to make comments on this item on the agenda. We truly appreciate Colombia for being the first. Colombia has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Colombia truly appreciates the inclusion of this item on the Permanent Council meeting, and we welcome the comments from all the panelists and the concept note that we had on the strategic alliances with the private sector for well-being of the Americas. We recognize that in a hemispheric context marked by economic, social, and technological challenges, which are increasingly complex, it is crucial to strengthen cooperation that allow us to pull together our efforts, international organizations and financial institutions, as well as the private sector, for the integral development of our peoples. We truly particularly value that this dialogue is based on the principles of multilateralism, hemispheric cooperation, and democratic values of the inter-American system. as well as other relevant instruments such as the Inter-American Democratic Charter, the Social Charter of the Americas, and the Business Charter of the Americas. For Colombia, strengthening public and private alliances should be accompanied by clear-cut principles of transparency, ethics, respect for human rights, sustainability, and inclusion. We also deem it important to promote behavior which is responsible among business people based on integrity, the fight against corruption, environmental sustainability, gender equality, and respect for labor rights. In this regard, then, we feel it's crucial that strengthening our work with the private sector goes hand in hand with institutional robust mechanisms, due diligence, management of risk and governance that guarantee transparency, trust, and legitimacy of these alliances. We especially feel it's a priority that these alliances contribute to filling in territorial and digital gaps, promoting participation of SMEs, and strengthening the local capacities for fair energy transition, which is sustainable, that promotes fruitful, sustainable cooperation throughout the region. We also feel it's valuable that the organization continue to promote opportunities for dialogue, which will allow us to identify specific areas for cooperation, particularly in strategic sectors for the region, such as innovation, infrastructure, digital transformation, resilience, economic strengthening, and sustainability. And then finally, we welcome a high-level dialogue with the private sector in the General Assembly in Panama. We truly believe that this process can contribute to build a more well-coordinated, inclusive hemispheric agenda with shared prosperity for the Americas. Thank you very much. Colombia. Costa Rica has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Costa Rica truly appreciates this session as well as the valuable comments of the panelists that have been invited. We underscore the pertinence and relevance of this item on the discussions of the Council and recognize that establishing strategic alliances with the private sector allow us to generate shared prosperity and sustainable dialogue as well as an inclusive one in the hemisphere. For decades, Costa Rica has counted on a model of development that is based on social investment, democracy, and economic opening up, and a strong commitment to environmental sustainability. This view has allowed us not only to bring in responsible investments, but to promote business environment which is wedded to innovation, employment, decent employment, and green transition. And that's why I would like to underscore three different fundamental elements. First, we recognize the need to promote alliances which are geared towards tangible results, which are measurable, verifiable, or quantifiable, measurable. And this requires robust indicators, monitoring and evaluation systems, which underscore the contributions for integral development in the region. And then second, these strategic alliances should mobilize adequate resources which are fair both throughout the hemisphere as well as for the organization. These alliances will not only make it possible to have access to innovative financial tools, but also can promote a transfer of technology knowledge as well as strengthen the capacity of institutions, especially in these countries that have structural issues that are not seen with the per capita indicators that we usually use. And then strategic alliances with the private sector must move towards inclusion and multi-sector participation. This inclusion and participation should be or have clear-cut rules and should be based on transfers, accountability, and results-based outcomes and institutional strength, always with a view for the long run. We feel it's crucial and fundamental to prioritize the value of the OAS as a platform for coordination in the hemisphere. The accumulated experience with the private sector shows us that there is a solid basis on which we can build more ambitious ways forward. The initiatives taken and synergies should be prized, and that is why we look forward to the next dialogue with the private sector, and this will take place during the General Assembly in Panama. We will continue to actively contribute to a regional agenda that promotes sustainable solutions, innovation, and prosperity that is shared by all. Before concluding, Costa Rica makes a strong clarion call for these strategic alliances to be up and running, and this should translate into resilient development, which is sustainable and inclusive. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Costa Rica. I give the floor to Canada. Canada, Ambassador Savage has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Canada truly appreciates the Secretary General as well as the panelists today for their presentations on this particular item, which is very important for all of us. Canada is wedded to work with these partners in the Americas to continue to move towards long-lasting, durable, sustainable economies. For example, to work with the World Bank, international institutions such as the IDB as well, and the Caribbean Development Bank. They all play a crucial role in preserving an economic stability and deepening regional cooperation for economic integration and for mobilization of investments for sustainable, inclusive growth. Latin America and the Caribbean are well positioned to prosper and thrive in a world economy which is moving at great speed. Nonetheless, materializing or crystallizing this requires coordinated and structured action. As was well said by the Secretary General, economic prosperity is essential for development. This should be shared and prosperity should be inclusive. In English.
In the spirit of mutually beneficial economic partnerships, Canada is leveraging its international assistance in the region to support shared economic priorities and advancing sustainable growth. To this end, Canada sees quality, sustainable infrastructure as foundational to inclusive growth, including for reducing poverty, strengthening climate resilience, and advancing gender equality across the region. We view regional partners, including multilateral development banks, as critical to mobilizing private sector capital at scale, leveraging innovative financing and risk mitigation tools to advance bankable, high-impact infrastructure investments across the region. Economic corridors offer a practical pathway to drive productivity and competitiveness by coordinating multi-sector investments that expand trade, unlock private investment, and deliver inclusive opportunities for women, youth, and underserviced communities. Canada would note that when women are able to develop their economic potential, whether as producers, entrepreneurs, or business leaders, economies and communities thrive, and the benefits of growth reach more people. For this reason, we also support women-led businesses and women entrepreneurs. Since 2024, Canada has been supporting the IDB Lab in the implementation of the Accelerate Women Entrepreneurs project, ensuring that 450 women entrepreneurs across Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, Panama, and Peru can access the training, connections, and financial services needed to grow their businesses, improve performance, and connect to value chains. This initiative provides leading women entrepreneurs with access to a 6-month virtual acceleration program to build their business management capacity, financial literacy, and access to investment. Limited access to credit and investment opportunities continue to pose challenges for women entrepreneurs and limit their resilience of their businesses. The establishment of innovative partnerships such as those promoted by this project is critical in promoting and mobilizing resources. Public and private sector infrastructure complement one another, and both need new forms of financing to catalyze inclusive growth. The private sector's financial capital and know-how are key, including to to enable access to credit and ensuring startups are supported rapidly. Canada's international development assistance promotes innovation by supporting new business models, practices, technologies, and ways to develop products and services. We are grateful for today's exchange on how to better reinforce sustainable development and inclusive economies in our hemisphere. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador Savage. Y ahora le damos la palabra.
Now we'll give the floor to the Dominican Republic Ambassador Cordero. Madam Chair, the Dominican Republic would like to express gratitude for including this item on the agenda to think about the strategic partner for common good, the Americas, impact of the private sector, and the presentations of the panelists and contribution of the private sector to resilience. We also would like to thank the Chair and Secretary General for promoting venues for dialogue geared to strengthening cooperation amongst member states, international financial institutions, and the business sector. We also appreciate the work with partners, the WAT, Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce and Chambers of Commerce. The public-private partnership is a priority and a key element in order to make progress towards more resilient societies that are more resilient and sustainable. Our national experience shows that coordination between the state and the private sector can create huge contributions in the area of economic growth, creation of jobs, innovation, and creation of opportunities for the population. In a hemispheric context marked by economic challenges, technology, energy, and social challenges as well, which are increasingly complex, we understand that no single actor can respond in an isolated manner, and so we particularly value the multi-actor approaches promoted in this initiative and the need to consolidate cooperation mechanisms. That will make it possible to identify synergies and translate them into concrete action for integral development of our societies. My country believes that it's especially relevant to continue to push strategic partnerships to promote partnerships, innovation, infrastructure, energy, independence and security, and the digital transition and sustainable development. In this regard, we also recognize that could be played by financial international institutions and multilateral development banks in supporting regional initiatives that are of high impact. We believe that this session is a privileged venue to promote input for the upcoming high-level dialogue that will take place in the context of the Panama General Assembly, promoting a hemisphere that's based on prosperity, economic development, and regional cooperation. The Dominican Republic reiterates its willingness to continue to support initiatives that provide for a more close coordination between states and international bodies. And we are convinced that these partnerships are a key tool for bolstering stability, prosperity, shared prosperity, and the well-being of our peoples. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to El Salvador. Ambassador Acevedo, you have the floor, ma'am. Thank you. We would like to thank the chair for including this item on our agenda and the panelists for their very worthwhile contributions. We also take note with great interest of the headway made by the Secretary General and the Secretariat in the area of public-private partnerships and high-level dialogue in the context of the General Assembly that is upcoming. And we look forward to this and to broad participation in this. This is the appropriate time for strengthening dialogue and to build a strategic relationship with the private sector for the benefit of our people. Coordinating and strengthening multi-actor partnerships that will make it possible to consolidate institutional national efforts throughout the hemisphere. El Salvador recognizes that to achieve prosperity, it's vital to create an environment that is propitious to private investment, as well as the creation of and formalization of private business in the hemisphere, with a focus on micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. To that end, we have developed an agenda based on modernization, openness to new investment, and consolidation of a business environment which is compatible trustworthy, reliable, and geared to respecting the private sector as a driver of the economy. El Salvador believes that optimal conditions need to be created for investment, and thanks to progress in the area of security, economic development, and innovation, the business sector plays a vital role in consolidating national growth. In 2025, private investment grew at the highest pace since the pandemic, with an increase of 26.4% according to World Bank data, which reflects trust in the business sector in El Salvador. We have a committee to facilitate investment, which is a vital instrument to promote strategic investment from the private sector with 4 components: the normative framework for trust, simplification of the laws, and other elements. One item that we would highlight is the impact of Service TV. This is a private-public partnership to promote tourism, which has an initial investment of more than $40 million in public infrastructure, which was a catalyst for private national capital in hotels and the restaurant industry. Other strategic areas are recognition of OAS and recognition of actors that are important to development in the private sectors. This is why we have sustained efforts to work with the diaspora with specialized skills, promoting the strategic sectors, business sectors in construction, and creating business. With more than 27 counselors throughout the world, we are promoting commercial opportunities and opportunities for investment in our country. This model focused on commercial investment at the national area with the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of El Salvador, for example, helps to plan at a territorial level for urban sustainability and to create opportunities. This partnership reflects the conviction that development is built on sound foundations and with a strategic vision and public-private partnership. Our focus on international cooperation is focused on 3 main priorities: social well-being, reactivating the economy, and security and effective government, working together in order to strengthen partnerships with different actors and with private sector in areas such as the green climate, innovation, and digitalization, just to mention a few. Madam Chair, to effectively grapple with social inequality which prevails in our region, we need to use the OAS instruments that already exist to promote innovative plans and work with the private sectors and other multi-actor sectors on a mechanism to develop programs and have access to opportunities. This is the appropriate time for the organization to reorganize cooperation with the private sector and to set specific goals geared to creating the necessary partnerships to contribute to development, job creation, and opportunity creation in the hemisphere. Finally, we reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism oriented towards the sector to improve the quality of life of our people and working with the private sector as a strategic and vital partner in this common endeavor. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. I now give the floor to Guatemala, Ambassador Escobar. Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate inclusion of this item on the agenda to think about public-private strategic partners and other key partners in the hemisphere with a view to promoting development and common good of the Americas. In that regard, the presentations of the panel were particularly worthwhile, and we appreciate them. And we appreciate the initiative of the Secretary General to drive high-level dialogue with the private sector in the context of the GA of the OAS. This is a relevant opportunity to strengthen hemispheric cooperation and to promote sustainable development. Guatemala believes that strengthening more competitive and innovative economies in the Americas requires mechanisms that are effective for cooperation amongst member states, with the private sector, with financial institutions, and other strategic actors. These spaces make it possible to share experiences, create synergies, and make progress with initiatives that benefit all. In that regard, we value that this approach is reflected in the new strategic plan of the OAS for 2026 to 2030. In keeping with the principles enshrined in the Charter, the Inter-American Democratic Charter, and the Inter-American Business Charter. These are inputs that recognizes the vital role of the private sector for integral development that plays a key role to strengthen the instruments of the organization geared to promoting the role of the private sector in the hemisphere. With regard to national priorities, we think it's vital to continue to promote initiatives that relate to competitiveness, sustainability, digital transformation, the facilitation of trade, attracting investment, and strengthening micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. Along those lines, we would highlight mechanisms in the context of the organization, such as the Program for Competitiveness of the Americas, and we would underscore the importance of reactivating the Inter-American Competitive Network, which are spaces that promoted technical cooperation, exchange of good practices between governments and strategic actors in the region. Distinguished representatives, the Inter-American Charter, the Inter-American Enterprise Charter, recognizes that dynamism is based on democratic stability and social inclusion as key components. In that regard, we appreciate the coordination of different hemispheric initiatives to ensure greater complementarity, avoid duplication of efforts, and to promote more efficient cooperation in the hemisphere for economic development. Thank you, Madam Escobar. I now give the floor to Paraguay, says the Chair, Ambassador Florentine. Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Paraguay would thank the Chair for convening this session and appreciates the relevance of this topic in our region. We would also like to thank the panelists for their presentations and to extend special greetings to the Secretary General who is with us today in this important dialogue. For our country, integral development, resilience, and economic ownership of the region are not goals for the public sector that it should be achieving, nor should it achieve alone. The international context of technological transformation and social transformation requires that we act boldly. Paraguay categorically reaffirms the principles of the Inter-American Business Charter 2021. We are convinced that a dynamic, competitive, and legally secure business sector is the indispensable driver of economic growth, reducing poverty, and preserving democratic integrity. We continue to work towards being a pole of attracting investment with macroeconomic policy and due to our industry and energy policies, and that's why we fully share the vision shared in this document with regard to the importance of value chains, infrastructure, and innovation through public-private cooperation. In that regard, the government of Paraguay has promoted and enacted laws recently, Law 252, to modernize the regime for promoting investment and the provision of goods and services by the state. We are convinced that public-private partnerships are not just commercial tools. They are also vehicles for ownership and social cohesion. Looking to the next high-level dialogue with the private sector in the General Assembly of Panama, we would urge delegations to have a dialogue that doesn't just remain at the level of rhetoric and declarations. We need to have concrete goals so this becomes an effective instrument for integral development and a shared commitment to leave no one behind. Chair, you can count on the constructive commitment of the delegation of Paraguay to continue coordinating efforts with international financial institutions and the business world in the benefit of the peoples of our Americas. Thank you, Ambassador, for your contribution. I now give the floor to Ambassador Delgado of Panama. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Panama, with special interest, welcomes this regular session of the Permanent Council, which is dedicated to the topic of strategic partnerships for the common good of the America, impact of the private sector. This is an opportune venue and a necessary one to promote a substantive exchange between member states and representatives of the private sector, oriented towards identifying the main challenges for our hemisphere. And this is in an international environment which is characterized by deep-seated economic, technological, and productive transformation, as well as by growing challenges to sustainable development, resiliency, and economic recovery. It's increasingly clear that responding to these challenges requires innovative approaches, participation, and coordinated efforts that would provide for complementarity between the private and public sector and international actors. I'd like to begin by thanking, on behalf of the Republic of Panama, the worthwhile comments of Secretary General Ramdin and the Vice President of the Americas of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Janes, President of the Latin American Business Council, and Mr. Martin Cave, Chair of the Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce and Executive Director of Antigua Barbuda Chamber of Commerce. Their thoughts reflect the importance of strengthening a shared vision amongst governments and with the private sector and regional institutions to work towards resilient, inclusive, and prosperous societies. Panama believes that this vision is fully aligned with the principles which inspire the inter-American system and the role of the OAS as a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and hemispheric coordination. As highlighted by the concept note for this session, the Inter-American Charter and the Social Charter of the Americas recognizes the close relationship between democracy, economic development, social inclusion, and creation of opportunity. The Inter-American Business Charter also underscores the vital role played by a dynamic, competitive business sector to create jobs, reduce poverty, and create inclusive and resilient societies. From that point of view, Panama recognizes the strategic value of the private sector as an indispensable partner in promoting sustainable economic growth, decent jobs, and innovation. Public-private cooperation can be consolidated as an effective tool to address structural challenges in the hemisphere as long as it's supported by clear institutional frameworks, transparency, and a shared view of development. This dialogue provides us with an opportunity to identify opportunities where experience, capital, and the experience of the private sector can all contribute concretely to the well-being of our societies and the strengthening of our economies. In the case of Panama, we understand that economic development and competitiveness in the region increasingly depend on the ability to develop multi-sectoral partnerships to promote connectivity, innovation, and sustainable development and integration of value chains. Our region has enormous potential and human potential, but we need to translate that potential in shared prosperity, and we need to make headway towards cooperation models which are dynamic and which are results-oriented. Likewise, we would also promote the importance of actively working with financial institutions in this area. Cooperation between states, the private sector, and international finance institutions is vital to mobilize the resources and to support initiatives that will drive projects that have an impact, such as in infrastructure, energy, connectivity, digital transformation, and innovation. We also value the efforts undertaken by the Secretary General and the Secretariat of the OAS to recognize the importance of the private sector, international institutions, including negotiation of new cooperation agreements to promote high-level dialogue venues. The Republic of Panama celebrates the upcoming high-level dialogue with the private sector, which will take place in the context of the 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American States, to be held in Panama, working on an agenda towards prosperity, positioning the Americas to leverage new opportunities. We are convinced that this space will make it possible to create concrete proposals to drive investment, strengthen hemispheric cooperation, and build a modern agenda of prosperity for our region. Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, Panama reaffirms its firm commitment to the hemispheric agenda to create strategic partnerships geared to the common good, shared responsibility, and respect for multilateralism. And the speaker has been cut off, notes the interpreter. Thank you, says the chair. We now give the floor to the Ambassador Encinas of Mexico. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mexico would like to express its gratitude for today's presentation and ratifies its conviction about the importance of partnership with the private sector and international financial institutions to drive integral development to benefit people. For Mexico, these partnerships should be focused on closing the gaps of inequality, strengthening Social Security, workers' rights, create dignified jobs and salaries, and achieve the goals of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, in keeping with the Inter-American Business Charter and other OAS resolutions as they relate to responsibility of business and the promotion and protection of human rights in the business arena. These instruments provide a framework of principles so the private sector is working in a key area to achieve integral development in the region, for which it's important to oversee its compliance with that. The current context means that we must strengthen mechanisms for regional cooperation and strategic partnerships and encourage an environment for micro, small, and medium enterprises to thrive, socioeconomic development, and better coordination with the international development banks. We need financing that will help to drive policies, programs, and projects for development and strengthen cooperation in the Americas. Mexico promoted a development model based on humanism with social justice and sustainability, which is centered on people. Since 2018, the minimum salary in Mexico has increased in real terms by 54%. We have sought energy sovereignty and driven national industry. We are convinced that the best program for social well-being is creating jobs that are well paid. And that's why Mexico is stimulating mixed investment, private, public investment, foreign investment, to create shared prosperity, proving that there's no contradiction between the well-being of the majority and the well-being of business. We are encouraging public-private partnership for economic development, which is equitable, sustainable, and sustaining. For our plan of 2026 to 2030, we are already contemplating public investment, which is historic, of more than $320 billion. Also, as of May, the President of Mexico signed 4 decrees in the area of immediate authorization of investments, the establishment of a single digital window for trade, simplification of processes, and the promotion of productive investment and budget compliance, which will give greater certainty for investors in our country. This is a decisive moment. It's also an opportunity. The OAS should work strategically in order to bolster economic development in an integral manner, which is also sustainable and inclusive, by promoting financing and investment for the well-being of the people of the hemisphere. To that end, our country will cooperate and will do its very best so that the OAS meets those goals. Thank you, Ambassador, for that statement, says the Chair. I now give the floor to Peru, Ambassador Coronado. Thank you, Chair. My delegation would also like to thank you for convening this session and for the presentation of the Secretary General and the distinguished panelists. Peru believes that the challenges of our region in the area of economic and social development, economic recovery, job creation, innovation, and resilience require comprehensive approaches and better coordination between states, international financial institutions, and the private sector, of course. In that context, we'll recognize the important role played by the private sector as a driver of innovation and generation of opportunity, especially when its action takes place in the context of social responsibility, sustainability, and inclusion. We agree also on the importance of promoting cooperation that's public and private, multi-actor approaches, development of capacity, mobilizing investment in order to grapple with hemispheric challenges. This is especially true in areas such as infrastructure, connectivity, energy, digitalization, and chains of value. Peru appreciates that the OAS continues to promote a space of dialogue geared to bringing all the member states together with strategic partners in keeping with hemispheric goals, with an approach focused on the integral development of our peoples. We also believe that it's important that these efforts lead to concrete results and complement the work to be done in the context of the upcoming high-level dialogue on partnership to take place in Panama, as highlighted by our dear friend, the Ambassador of Panama. Finally, we reiterate Peru's willingness to continue driving cooperation initiatives regionally to build more resilience, inclusive, and prosperous societies for all. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now I give the floor to Ambassador Chenia from Argentina. Thank you, distinguished Chair. Argentina also would like to thank you for including this item on the agenda. We recognize the importance of the panelist presentations and appreciate a moment to reflect on the importance of strategic partnerships for private-public partnerships for the common good of the Americas. In a context that's increasingly complex, we see that no actor alone can respond to all the needs of our peoples. States have an undeniable responsibility with regard to public policy to build sound institutions, protect their people, but the development of our people also requires mobilizing knowledge, capacity, innovation, and investment, and job creation, with which the private sector can contribute to. The private-public partnership should be understood as a tool to create better conditions for growth, investment, and opportunity creation. The public sector has a key role to play in crafting clear rules, predictability, legal security, and appropriate institutional support. It needs to coordinate economic growth and make sure that it's at the service of human development and social cohesion. The government should not obstruct the innovative capacity of the private sector, but rather encourage it. The private sector, for its part, contributes with investment, productive capacity, technological capacity, job creation, and practical knowledge and understanding of the challenges in our economies. In that regard, strategic partnerships are particularly important to make progress in key areas of the region, such as infrastructure, connectivity, innovation, digitalization, and strengthening value chains and food security. In all of these arenas, the coordination between governments, businesses, international institutions, and financial institutions, academy, civil society, and subnational governments can respond more effectively, more quickly, and in a way that's better adapted to the concrete reality in each territory. In that framework, we value the efforts of the OAS to provide spaces and venues for dialogue with the private sector and with international financial institutions. The organization has a background and legitimacy that make it a great source for the OAS members and to provide for strategic partnership. We encourage the OAS to be increasingly relevant, and the private sector trusts in the OAS to promote that relevance. Moreover, we should say that this topic enjoys broad consensus amongst members from all regions, and it's always virtuous to be able to work in the OAS through and with that unites us and not that which separates us. I'd especially like to refer to the program ACE, America Competitiveness Exchange. This was developed in the context of the OAS with financial support from the United States government. This program is a concrete example of how cooperation can translate it into direct links between governments, the private sector, entrepreneurs, academia, and subnational actors. Its value lies specifically in having experiences and identifying opportunities for partnership and successful innovation, competitiveness, and economic development at the local level. Argentina believes that this kind of program show that hemisphere cooperation can be practical, concrete, and results-oriented. It's not just about debating general principles. It's about creating contacts, programs, projects, investments, and lessons learned, and opportunities for our countries and their communities. Madam Chair, for all these reasons, we want to support the leadership of our Panamanian brothers and sisters and their efforts to convene a meeting with the private sector in the context of the upcoming General Assembly. The reasoning is clear. shared prosperity is also a precondition for democratic stability, more jobs, more stability, more inclusion, and better protection for the future. These provide more resilient societies, and that's why the OAS promotes, Argentina promotes the OAS promoting strategic partnerships to bring the public and private sectors together around common goals, each in its own specific role, but building synergies together, virtual ones. The common good of the Americas requires sound constitutions, a dynamic private sector which is innovative and committed to the development of our societies. The task before us is to build those synergies, a culture of synergies with a strategic meaning and with a vision focused on the people, our people. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, señor.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that very helpful contribution. I now give the floor to the delegation of the United States, Ambassador Risotto.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation would like to underscore the importance of this agenda item. The strategic partnerships we are discussing here are more than relationships between governments. The private sector, academia, international organizations, and other key stakeholders, they are vital tools for addressing our shared hemispheric challenges and advancing collective prosperity. While today's discussion includes a focus on ways to generate contributions to raise the profile of high-level dialogue, my delegation notes that this is a small part of a larger discussion. Public-private partnership is a cornerstone of long-term and impactful economic development and shared prosperity in our hemisphere. When governments and the private sector work together effectively, we unlock innovation, mobilize resources, and deliver results that neither can achieve alone. For the United States, it's essential that partnerships prioritize measurable outcomes that benefit communities. Measurable outcomes are essential. The reality is results attract partners. When stakeholders seek concrete outcomes, jobs created, infrastructure built, communities strengthened, they want to be part of it. Success breeds momentum. This is why results-based partnerships are not just good practice, they're essential to expanding and sustaining our collective efforts. Jobs created directly correlate to migration issues and prosperity and regional stability. If we are serious about the impact, we must commit to this support. To realize this potential, the OAS must identify concrete actions that ensure sustained engagement that makes the private sector a regular partner. I will also stress the importance of development within the OAS, that this fourth pillar received minimum 25% of the OAS resources, funds, manpower. Again, I will repeat, jobs will create and greatly fix migration while creating prosperity within the hemisphere. My delegation looks forward to continuing to explore mechanisms for strengthening multi-stakeholders and public-private partnerships to promote sustainable development, economic inclusion, and resilience in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Y ahora le damos la palabra.
Now, Ambassador Valencia from Ecuador has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Resilience requires public-private alliances, but it also requires multilateralism, which is efficient and renewed, able to build consensuses throughout the hemisphere, and which understands that alliances are not just for public capital, but private capital as well. These are alliances that come from civil society that require a reinvestment and a strengthening of all of organizational multilateral schemes. Madam Chairman, Ecuador feels it's imperative to promote collective efforts and that are innovative, that are specific, thus strengthening, in addition to other things, these public-private alliances, the multi-actor systems that serve as tools to generate employment, to attract responsible investment, and to promote economic growth, to strengthen regional resilience based on institutions, and to advance and make progress towards development as is recognized by the Inter-American Business Charter. Ecuador truly appreciates the presentations that we had and the inclusion of this topic, and We would like to recuperate stability and ensure economic and institutional stability by promoting favorable conditions for productive investment in strategic sectors such as energy, infrastructure, logistics, responsible mining, and technological innovation, as well as digital economy, in addition to others, including reforms for investments and to attract responsible capital, thus making it possible to have favorable conditions for Ecuador with a dollarized economy, and underscoring with the advantages of having a dollarized economy and commercial and trade opening up. These things underscore economic zones and PPPs for the development of logistic infrastructure and public works that we need, as well as moving towards simplification and procedures for investment projects. And similarly, Ecuador works by preparing a general culture for future workers with technical vocational training, which strengthens capacities for an economy that is based on knowledge, innovation, and added value, without them under, overlooking the need to build citizenship and a continental identity. This vision is wedded to a deep-seated conviction and a true view for all strategies and for all strategic alliances as well, especially the PPP alliances. These should serve to improve the well-being of all people. We must strengthen both economic development as well as overall development. And so, Madam Chairman, finally, Madam Chairman, the next high-level dialogue in the private sector, which we have in the context of the General Assembly in Panama, is an opportunity to have a valuable time to build hemispheric consensuses and to work on alliances as well as significant cooperation, and so that the joint work we do is always moving towards a common agenda for shared prosperity. Finally, development is not just a macroeconomic issue with items on the agenda. It is reflected in the capacity to build consensuses, opportunities, and real possibilities for the future, hemispheric friendships, and over and above everything else, peace in our society. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, I should like to give the floor to the delegation of Haiti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. Secretary General, dear colleagues, Madam Assistant Secretary General, I should like to begin by thanking the chair for putting this item on the agenda for today's session. This is a topic of the greatest importance because the private sector plays a role of driver of growth, and we believe that international cooperation, by promoting investment, economic growth, has already proven itself in the modernization of economy throughout the world. And we furthermore commend the OAS's initiatives to promote dialogue around the private sector. And we also see ourselves in the CL's, Latin American Business Council's speech. In his statement, he encouraged the region to pay special attention to the situation in Haiti and to do so from the point of view of investments. I think it's a good approach. And we, in turn, also encourage that type of approach to the Haitian question. I have further heard the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce of the region, who also referenced Latin America in the statement. I'm not sure if it's a matter of translation, but at some point he referenced a virus that would be spread. Could I be granted a clarification on that? I don't wish to dwell on that without understanding what he intended to say. He was speaking very quickly because he needed to conclude, but I'd just like to say that Haiti, despite its economic difficulties, has undertaken a great deal of effort, has made huge efforts, especially domestically, to protect workers. Recently, Madam Chair, Haiti increased the minimum wage by more than 200%. And this for Haitian workers. So I would like to thank everyone, and once again, I'd like to thank the panelists for their presentations. And I would just like to say, that the OAS in its in the fact that it brings member states together around this idea, around this initiative of investment in the Americas. The OAS, in doing so, is doing excellent work, and I commend that work, and I hope that this work will continue and that special attention will be paid also to those countries which need special attention in order to be able to transform their economies. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My pleasure, says the chair.
In fact, Mr. Cave from Americham made a reference on the situation in Haiti and the support that the regional cameras of chambers of commerce are doing in this regard. What we will do is we will share with all of you the statements that were made today. In that regard, you can also seek the information that you are looking for. And we want to share this as an outcome of this point in the agenda of the suggestion of Costa Rica, initiative of Costa Rica as chair of the Permanent Council. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Y para finalizar con la lista de oradores.
And to conclude with the list of speakers, we'll now give the floor to the permanent observer from France to the OAS. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Secretary General, Madam Assistant Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, permanent representatives. France would like to thank the chair of the Permanent Council for organizing this session, which is looking at strategic partnerships for the common good of the Americas, impact of the private sector. We also would like to thank the Secretary General and the panelists for their contributions. France fully shares the idea that economic development, democratic stability, and social cohesion are all closely linked. In that context, partnership between the private, public sector, and financial institutions internationally are all key in order to grapple with the challenges of the region. The French actions in the region reflect our commitment. More than 2,000 companies are in Latin America, with about 1,000 in Brazil and 700 in Mexico. These lead to more than $20 billion worth of trade annually. And France is one of the largest employers in Brazil. It's the largest, with almost 100,000 people employed. In Mexico, that figure is almost 180,000. This French president is due to a willingness to contribute to innovation, training, sustainable development, and innovation. We would also like to strengthen cooperation between small and middle-sized French companies and Latin American companies that play a key role in economic vitality and local employment. We commend efforts undertaken by the Secretary General to strengthen dialogue with economic actors and to promote multi-actor mechanisms for cooperation. France will remain an engaged commitment alongside OAS members to promote shared prosperity based on inclusion, sustainability, and democratic principles. Thank you.
Merci a vous. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for your very valuable comments. This discussion today, we feel that it's really been very valuable, and we would like to thank all of you who have taken the floor and who have participated in this exercise that has given us the chance to underscore the importance of continuing to promote opportunities for dialogue such as this one with you member states, with the private sector, and all of the financial international institutions. All of this is part of a joint effort which is geared towards strengthening hemispheric cooperation, the generation of opportunities, and of course with that, various speakers did mention it, opportunities for employment as well, and training for our populations, the issue of innovation and also synergy and integral development of all people in the Americas. Thanks to everyone. This was really an opportunity where multilateralism was very present and very fruitful, where we had a shared vision for the future of the region by all member states. So let's take due note. We will continue with our conversation, and we will also have a dialogue that will follow on this in Panama. So thank you very much. It is so agreed. As the next item on the agenda, we will address the presentation of the 2025 annual report of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture to the 56th regular session of the General Assembly, circulated document CP/Doc 6193/26. For the presentation of this report, I am very pleased to greet and extend a most warm welcome to Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim, who for the very first time as director is going to address this permanent council as Director General of ICA. Dr. Ibrahim, you are joining us from beautiful Costa Rica in English.
And thank you for being here with us in this permanent council to hear your report of 2025. Very welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Madam Chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Alejandra Solano, His Excellency, the Secretary General of the OAS, Mr. Albert Ramdin, and Assistant Secretary General Laura Hill, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends and colleagues, let me also recognize Mr. Lee Risotto, U.S. Ambassador who visited ICA a few weeks ago, but also with this Honorable Secretary Ramdin to discuss cooperation. Also, I would like to highlight the work of Mr. Ambassador Cherinak and Ambassador Ana Delgado, who organized a social event on which it gave me an opportunity to meet many of the ambassadors who are present here in this event today, and also Mr. Sam Hines, my countryman and ambassador, who is working there. First, I would like to express my gratitude for the trust placed in my leadership as the Director General of ICA during the pivotal time in the Americas. The objective here is to showcase the vision of agriculture as part of the solution with strong agribusiness farmers and emphasize that food security is national security, and also the role of ICA as a partner of choice in agriculture, working closely with the governments, with the private sector, with the farmers' organizations, with the farmers, but also with the academic and research organization to enhance food security. And also to present the achievements of the 2025 report and what are the transition into the new medium-term plan that we have to 2026 to 2030 to address the challenges that we are facing on our agriculture sector and the food systems so that we can make the Americas the food basket for the world. First, let me begin to say that I've been here already for 4 months as the Director General and embrace a commitment to lead an institution that has stood hand in hand with 34 member states for over 84 years as a cornerstone of regional agriculture development and addressing the innovation that we need to transform the sector. ICA reaffirms its mission of excellence and value added the creation of international public goods, providing technical cooperation based on 5 core principles: evidence-based technical excellence, respect for national sovereignty, strategic focus, generation of measurable results, and responsible administration. Transparency is very important in managing the resources efficiently while at the same time leveraging additional resources to have additionality in the work that we do. We must acknowledge that food security is national security. The Americas is the main actor in the provision of food and is unequally qualified to feed a global population of 10 billion. But this region cannot protect its food production and trade capacity weakens its strategic position. Agriculture is now far more than production. It is the engine for employment, rural retention and welfare, as well as environmental protection. But also looking at the nexus of nutrition, nexus of energy, and nexus of environment. That is where ICA has been moving in a new narrative for agriculture, working together with the countries, with the public and private sector, and the academic institutions. ICA adds value by acting as a technical catalyst, bridging scientific evidence to sovereignty decision making, delivering national technical results that scale and unlock opportunities for the hemisphere, and adding value beyond agriculture. For example, we have been working on bioeconomy, we have been working on several areas for looking at circular economies and looking at more added value to the value chain so that farmers and rural communities can benefit from these areas. We have provided each delegation with a summary of the main achievements in every of the results that we have during 2025. During 2025, our impacts here are listed in a summary where, as I mentioned, the ICA's result-based organization, based on results, on impacts at different scales, at the regional scale, at the national, but at a territorial scale. During 2025, we had 430 initiatives executed in 2025. More than 600 validated operational results. Close to 400 technical agreements signed. 266 strategic working partners. These are strategic alliances that we have made. And here I would like to highlight the importance of the private sector. The private sector buyer, CropLife, Corteva, Appreciate from Argentina, the poultry industry from the Caribbean, the SNV from Brazil, also many of the coffee sector, the cocoa sectors that we're working in Central America. As an example, where ICA has signed agreements with the private sector and working together with the private and public sector to enhance the scaling up of good practices that we have been promoting in that area. We have been also working in evidence-based decisions, rigorous science-based policy making, where we have created an observatory for policies and platforms which provides our policymakers with the metrics, with the data, with the information that is needed for decision making, but also responding to issues. Currently, we are working on issues related to fertilizer shortages, where we've been providing with the ministers what are the solutions in need in terms of shortages for fertilizers or increasing prices for energy, which affects the food systems, but also what are the solutions that we need in terms of transforming the food systems. In addition, we have been looking at strategic funding, unlocking funding. We have mobilized $200 million in new funding via international and national budget efforts, and maintaining up to $700 million in the portfolio to work with the countries for transforming the food systems, and which provide opportunities for our young people with a gender approach, including women, working towards agribusiness, looking at new succession plan for the farmers, but also improving the productivity through innovation, science, technology, and innovation for enhancing the productivity. We also have been looking at business generation of concrete market linkages and real business opportunities for Latin America and the Caribbean companies. Here, I would like to highlight the importance of having the insertion of youths in incubators that we have been promoting in all the regions that we've been working on. Understanding that ICA is working in 34 countries, which is very diverse. Diversity in terms of the natural resources, but diversity in terms of scale, in terms of institutional capacity. And here is where ICA as an institution has been working in looking at differentiated strategies, differentiated policies, a new generation of policies to enhance the transformation of the food systems but also looking at what are the barriers for transformation in each of the countries that we've been working on. Safeguarding trade, strengthening animal health and phytosanitary systems with digital traceability, looking at the tools, looking at regional safety. And here I would like to highlight that HIC has been working on main issues like the screwworm, the new screwworm, world screwworm problem, which is now from Panama all the way to the States, and where we've been working in each of the countries to provide solutions to enhancing these problems. Looking at TR4 in the Caribbean, also looking at the TR4 in bananas, like countries in Ecuador, Colombia, Costa Rica, which are main producers of bananas. The African swine fever, which is affecting the Dominican Republic and all the Caribbean. Which are the bird flu, which is also affecting the North, the US, Canada, and Mexico. Main important diseases that we are targeting, but also providing solution on the early warning systems, but also what the practices, the good practices, farmers and the private sector organizations have to apply to control this. But also the geopolitical positioning. ICA has been working with the ministers and working with the stakeholders to looking at the issues of why agriculture is a solution to the multiple challenges in terms of the planetary challenges, biodiversity, water, soils, but also challenges to trade. The balances in terms of barriers to trade, in terms of EU negotiations, discussions and dialogue on global forums on looking at pesticides and limits to pesticides, maximum residues to pesticides, while at the same time organizing the member countries to participate in high-level forum and summits. We have been organizing many of these meetings at our headquarters in the regions to look at the dialogue. And currently, we are looking at issues, regional issues, as for example, the El Nino effect, which will affect the food systems in the whole of Central America, but also many countries in the South, but also providing solutions to the stakeholders so that they can use good practices to transform the systems. Next. So our new plan for 2026-2030 is streamlined on the focus on science, research, and innovation. And here I would like to highlight the importance of providing the countries with tools, digital tools, intelligence, artificial intelligence, gene editing, biotechnology. These are tools where ICA has been working now, looking at the regulatory frameworks that the countries need for looking at biotechnology application for enhancing productivity, but also looking at regenerative agriculture as one way of looking into more resilient and sustainable production and enhancing the productivity of the farming systems. Organic agriculture is one example where we've been championing and working, promoting this as a science for improving the food systems, but also looking at what consumers are demanding, but also what the United States have in terms of MAHA, make the Americas healthy again, make the Americas looking at the nutritional value of the foods that we've been working on. The other issues on trade and agribusiness and regional integration. How do we promote more regional integration in regional trade? By looking at the barriers, the non-tariff barriers that will enhance trade within the region. Here, we've already been discussing with the North, with the South, but also the Central and the Andean region of how can we promote more inter-regional trade and also favoring the small farmers into short circuit value chain where we can improve productivity, but also the small farmers are benefiting. And here's where the youths can also be engaged in the business development that we're working on. Animal and plant health, biosafety, and food safety continues to be one of the main programs that we continue to work on, since this represents a major threat to the food.
Dear Dr. Ibrahim, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you were You were finished or you require more time? Because we expected a shorter presentation on your side. There's a rule that we have to finish at 1 in order to go back at 2:30. I don't know if you want to do a closing remark.
This is the final slide actually, and the other program is on natural resources, working in greater precision, speed, cooperation, and unity. Next. So I thank you for listening, and I'm here open to answer any questions or comments that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We really appreciate your presentation and the information shared. And we invite you to reconnect at 2:30 because we're going to go now into a recess until 2:30 Washington, D.C. time. So welcome to reconnect and continue the discussion by then.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Y colegas, damos la pausa que les...
Colleagues, as I said, we will take the break now. At 1 o'clock now sharp, we'll be back at 2:30. It is so agreed. The session is adjourned.